Can folks stand along the back of these corners and do it as well?
But
I'd
they're
rather
back
folks
there
weren't back
anyway, so-
behind us, actually. No. All right, I'm going to call the meeting of the City Council for Wednesday, January 24th to order. Do we have any agenda additions or changes?
Sorry, Raj, one sec. Let me just start the recording and then you can say that again.
I'll do it again.
Recording in progress.
All right, I'll call the Wednesday, January 24th, 2024 City Council meeting to order. Do we have any agenda additions or changes?
Yes. I'd like to pull the minutes from the last meeting out for
And that's
discussion.
6, what?
6A becomes 5F.
5F. And how about you, Regina? Anything?
I do not have any.
Okay. So without any other, Amber, nothing? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
I'll second.
Great. Motion a second. No questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Great.
Could we just take a moment to explain that where Amber is and where Andrew is and where Regina is?
We have a city councilor who couldn't be here tonight. We have our manager online. Regina Mahoney is attending from home. Amber Tebow and other councilors attending from home. They're both on screen on either one of these screens. We do have a quorum. We are going to do public comment first on items that now with our new meeting policy are on and not on the agenda. So if anyone has any comment about anything that is business before the city, if you are here for the rental registry, you will also have an opportunity to comment on that. But if you'd rather get it out of the way and leave, either one is fine. But in a few minutes after this portion, we're going to get into the public hearing for the rental registry. So Dottie, I think you had your hand raised.
Yes, I'd like.
So why don't you come on up? And she's going to come right in front of you two, right there in that chair. I'll hold the chair for you.
Chair.
Watch the TV, Dottie.
Yeah, don't bump
That's
your
a
head on the
killer.
TV.
And if you could, because we want to make
Okay.
sure everything's accurately represented, Dottie, in the minutes. Can you say your full name?
Okay, I am Dorothy P. Bergendahl.
Dottie, you're addressing me for this. Sorry.
Okay, I'm Dorothy P. Bergendahl, otherwise known as Dottie. I live on Taft Street. And I am here as a library trustee to bring attention to the record that the library budget that was worked on 2 weeks ago was inaccurate. Inaccurate in the area of salaries, which were calculated incorrectly. So the supposed 8.7% increase is really 5%. And as the trustees, we are going to have to pay more attention to the whole budget, but I have to say that it was very late in reaching us. We did not have a copy of the whole budget at our November meeting, so we couldn't react to what was appearing to be a rather startling increase. We will try to do better.
Great.
And yes, and I hope that the information gets to us in a more timely way. Do you have any questions for me?
Not at this time. That's not the
Okay.
portion of the meeting. Thank you. Is
Thank you.
there anyone else in the room that has any other comments or in the hallway? No. Look online. I don't see any hands. Oh, I do see one hand.
Yep, Annie's got her hand up.
Yep. This one's, that's it. Annie Cooper.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to read an email I sent earlier today. Hello, I'm confident that this evening, both the council and involved staff will offer the Brownell Library a public apology for the errors in the budget, which set in motion a public attack and confusion reigning on the library unnecessarily. I think it's the only way to ensure that we retain public trust and confidence in the good work staff does on a daily basis. That, along with the decision to create a fair and equal ask of all other departments, as was asked of Brownell, as well as a fair and equal study of the entirety of the remainder of the budget for each department for FY24 and FY25. Those are the expectations one would have of any business, school, or municipality in a similar position. Thanks. Looking forward to this getting sorted out by the transparent and upstanding municipality I know you strive to be. Oh, wait, I'm so silly. Of course. Now that you've seen the budget corrections for those 2 years in a row, you no longer have to make that demand of the library anymore. Because that demand was based on the errors. Whew. As we all know, libraries are a place we have to protect because of how, at the national level, it starts with something like we're seeing here. Slow but small attacks on a library can grow into something else. I am so grateful to the professionalism I know our city staff and council are capable of that removes all singular asks of this one department now that these errors have been made apparent. Thank you all for all you do to serve our community.
Great, thanks. Anyone else online?
Raj, can I just add one thing?
Sure.
Just want to let folks know, because it does look like we've got some people just on by telephone. So it's *6 to mute and star 9 to unmute. So just, I'll put that in the chat too, but just so folks know if there is anybody else who wants to speak.
Great. So we will move on to the public hearing. Let's see. So I'm going to open the public hearing on the proposed rental registry for the city of Essex Junction. We're first going to hear a presentation from Christian, our community development director. Then we will take comment from members of the public. Due to the number of people here, we will have 90 seconds for folks. We'll give you a warning around 80, and please try to wrap up by 2. I realize there's a lot to say. That said, if the person or 5 people in front of you has made the point that you intend to make, please say that you agree with the points of the person in front of you and add something. We are keeping track, so you won't be discounted by not repeating what someone else has already said. Please just add new business. We have a big budget meeting after this, and we want to hear from, we want to get a good count of what people have to say. Folks will need to come up to this microphone here, this one chair we have left, and give us their full name, residence, community where they live, and whatever you have to share with us. We'd love to hear it. After that, I'll close the public hearing. Council will talk about it, decide what we do next, if anything, and we'll move on to other business. There's no guarantee that we're going to act on this tonight, and we may keep considering it. We may make changes to it and warn another public hearing. So rest assured, if we do anything differently than what is proposed, there will be another opportunity for comment if it changes at all. Already asked how many people want to speak. It's pretty clear. So, Chris, if you're ready.
All right, I am going to turn this thing on here, and okay, there we go. So hi, I'm Chris Ewan. I'm the Community Development Director, and I am the staff member who has been working most closely with the Planning Commission and the City Council to develop the details of the proposed rental registry and inspection program. For members of the public who haven't, who are just joining us, I just have a few slides here to go over some of the basics of this proposal. So first of all, what is a rental registry and inspection program? It is a program where rental properties, rental units are required to register with the city, where there are regular inspections toward a set standard. In our case, it would be the Vermont Rental Housing Health and Safety Code. Some other cities have their own building codes as well. And there are municipal programs in place in a few jurisdictions in Vermont. That includes Barrie, Brattleboro, Burlington, St. Albans, St. Johnsbury, and Winooski. I should also note that South Burlington is working on a program right now, but they do not they have not passed an ordinance on that yet. So it's important to note rentals are a significant part of Essex Junction's housing supply. We estimate that about 40% of the housing units right now are rentals, but the new housing stock that is being built are predominantly rentals. And this continued growth in rentals is not surprising given the extremely low rental vacancy rates and this trend towards multifamily buildings being rentals is a nationwide trend, and it's influenced by things like national construction lending rules, finance rates, and default risks. We don't really control ownership structure, but we can ensure that that existing codes are met for rentals. We estimate that there are about 279 rental properties in Essex Junction, and within those there are 1,954-ish rental units. This is an estimate based on the grand list data, and we wouldn't know for sure until folks register if this is passed. Out of these 1,954, about 116 are within rental units within condominiums, but it would still count as rental units. This is a map of the spread of the rental units. You can see that the vast majority of them are kind of the larger apartments, like Riverside by the Village over here, Autumn Pond. There's a bunch of stuff along Pearl Street. Cathedral Square has a nonprofit housing over here, and of course in the Village Center there's a bunch. But peppered throughout the rest of the city, there are kind of smaller landlords out there, smaller rental situations. There's single family houses being rented out, or some units within smaller lots being rented out. So just a little bit of history of how this proposal came about. 2016 was really the first recent mention of a rental registry. It was first investigated at the request of a resident. And back then the village board saw a presentation from the city of Burlington's program. City of Burlington has had a rental registry and inspection program for a while, and they were just kind of showing how it worked. In 2019, the city went through a comprehensive plan update, and the comprehensive plan is a high-level plan that turns inputs about the community's vision and aspirations and tries to turn it into goals and objectives. These goals and objectives are then meant to be put into action through lower altitude policies and programs. But in this comprehensive plan, one of the goals was to provide a variety of housing opportunities for all present and future residents of the village of Essex Junction, while creating and preserving quality residential environments and existing neighborhood characteristics. A specific objective under that was to identify funding to compile a rental registry and rental inspection program. The comprehensive plan also says that a major component of the plan is to ensure that the aspects of thoughtful growth are met through maintenance of existing housing and the development of new housing. And the intent here is really to ensure the maintenance of existing housing as more rentals are added into the city. So in 2020, the joint Town and Village Housing Commission was created in a combined village board and town select board meeting. And in this meeting, rental and housing were discussed as, actually rental registry and rental and housing was discussed as an area of focus. Rental registry was specifically requested by a member of the public in the comments at that meeting. Moving on to 2021, the Housing Commission created a task force to explore the creation of a rental registry and inspection program, but the commission ultimately decided to table it because at the same time, the state legislature was considering a statewide rental registry bill. That was Senate Bill S-79. But that bill ultimately did not pass. So it was back upon municipalities to enact rental registry if they wanted to. In 2022, the state legislature made some changes again, and they transferred primary responsibility of the rental housing code from the Department of Health to the Department of Fire Safety. The changes were implemented in December 2023, so that's very recent. But at this time, there's the the Division of Fire Safety has added several state fire marshals to provide a limited complaints-based inspection program for complaints about rental housing. So this is, I would stress, this is complaints-based. They don't go around on a scheduled, proactive basis to inspect rental properties. But if anybody does have any issues and they understand the issues and they understand the rules, they can bring it up to they can bring it up to the state fire marshals right now. In 2023, just last year, the City Planning Commission looked at other municipal rental registry and inspection programs throughout Vermont, and they looked at they spent many meetings trying to figure out how a program could work in Essex Junction. And they ultimately recommended a draft ordinance to the City Council, which has evolved into what is being proposed today. Around the same time, the University of Vermont's Master of Public Administration program had a few students that were assigned to study rental registry and inspection for the city, and they provided us with a report and presentation as a part of their capstone project. The Planning Commission took that feedback into account when they were developing the draft ordinance and program proposal. So the proposed ordinance itself, where this would be named Municipal Code Chapter 20, Rental Registry and Inspection. The full ordinance is available online at bit.ly/EJ Rental Registry. It's also available in the City Council packets, and I think there might be some paper copies floating around in person right now as well. But the objectives of this ordinance are first and foremost to protect the life and safety of all residential renters. Number two, it is to develop an inventory of residential rental properties in Essex Junction. And number three, it is to improve opportunities to connect landlords to adequate resources for improving their properties.
Thanks, Chris.
It is all rental housing, which is defined as all dwellings or dwelling units, rooming houses, rooming units, or mobile home lots let by the owner to one or more persons to be used as a regular residence, or as defined in the current version of the Vermont Rental Housing Health and Safety Code. This ordinance would also regulate short-term rentals, just to the same extent as the regular rental housing. Unlike some other municipalities who have stricter rules on short-term rentals, the intent right here, based on previous discussion, is to have the same, just to regulate short-term rentals at the same level. So short-term rentals will be defined as a dwelling unit that is rented by guests for less than 30 consecutive days and more than 14 days per calendar year. So 14 days, that does not have to be consecutive. If somebody has an Airbnb and rents it out, for weekends at a time, but 7 weekends in a year, that would count.
Either Chris
And these short-term rentals can count as either a partial, they can either be a partial unit, which means a room located within a host's primary residence. That's, this is kind of rare. This is when you just rent a room within somebody's house, you're sharing their kitchen, things like that. More commonly, we see whole units, meaning the entire dwelling units, where you have your own door, you don't share a kitchen, you don't share a bathroom with a host or any other people. So those are short-term rentals, and those we've regulated. Owner-occupied exemption. So there, in the proposed ordinance, there is an exemption written in right now for owner-occupied dwelling units containing 1 or 2 rooms, which are rented out. And I will stress this is about dwelling units. So a person can own a house which also has, let's say, an accessory dwelling unit. It's an accessory apartment that has its own entrance at the back that they rent out. They are not living in that other unit. So in that case, they would not, the unit being rented out would not be exempt. We're treating accessory apartments the same as we would a duplex that is owned by, one of the people living there. The unit where the owner is living, that would be exempt. The unit where the owner is not living would not be exempt under this proposal. I would also stress that the Vermont Rental Housing and Health and Safety Code still applies, even if we have an exemption for the municipal rental registry and inspection program for owner-occupied units that have rooms being rented out. So if there are complaints, they could still be addressed. So inspection procedures. Under this proposal, every unit would be inspected at least every 5 years, but the inspection frequency would be determined based on risk factors like violation history, age of building, complaints history. So yeah, basically, if a unit is doing well and we are confident that that it will stay that way, it would have a certificate of fitness that lasts 5 years.
Nothing specific.
If deficiencies are found, the landlord, of course, will be notified and given time to address the issues. And the reinspection within 90 days would be free. But of course, if the landlord takes much longer than that to address the issues, there would be an additional fee to cover the cost of sending staff out there to inspect. When conditions are met, the inspector will issue a certificate of fitness valid for 1 to 5 years. The fee structure, this program is meant to be self-funded. There would be no impacts on the general fund, so there would be no impact on property taxes directly. But there would be $120 per unit fee charged to landlords. And I said before, there's no additional fees for regular inspection. There's no additional fee for re-inspections within 3 months. There would be a fee after 3 months if there's continued non-compliance. And what have we done so far in terms of public engagement? We have sent an information postcard to every single address in Essex Junction and to all landlords, even if the landlords are living outside of Essex Junction. We've also communicated through the website, social media, and print media. This has been covered a few times by the Essex Reporter, most recently, I think, in December. And the previously received public comments that I got over the last 2 or so weeks are in the packet. I've received a few more in the last 2 days that I've forwarded to the City Council. So yeah, that's the end of this presentation. There's more information online, and I will pass this back to the City Council.
Thank you, Chris. Regina, did you have something you wanted to add here?
Raj, I've got just a few things to add,
Great. Sounds good. Go for it.
if that works.
Yes. Bella, I think I'm muted.
I can't hear you if you're saying something.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so just want to let folks know that we have been contemplating this under the Community Development Department since the budget cycle of last year, FY24 budget development. That has been to address the council's desire to increase the capacity to do code enforcement more broadly for the land development code, as well as incorporate the health officer into the position that would do this work. We have since heard from the fire department about the potential of hosting this program under the fire department instead. There are pros associated with it being under either department. The pros under the fire department would be somebody on staff there Monday through Friday as a full-time position, which we do not have any of right now, that could assist with providing fire and EMS calls. The program is contemplating a new vehicle for this person to do the inspections, and also would be available to other staff, and specifically community development staff that currently do inspection work out of their own private vehicles. But the fire department has a vehicle already, so that's a potential pro in thinking about it being under the fire department. And so just wanted to point that out, and we can talk about that a little bit further, but just wanted to make that clear in the public hearing portion of the meeting. Also, I just want to say, I think I explained, if you're joined by telephone, the mute and unmute incorrectly. So *6 to both mute and unmute, *9 to raise or lower your hand. That's all I've got.
Great. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to do one of each. We're going to start in the room with one person, and we're going to go online, and we'll do that until we exhaust everyone online, and then we'll just keep going in the room. I don't know who got here first. Actually, I do know who got here first. I just can't see them. So we're going to, like I said, we're going to try to keep it to 1:30, 2 minutes. As I implored, if you agree with the person previous to you, please say so. We are keeping track. This meeting is being recorded, and we will be going back through to make sure we capture all of the sentiments, including I agree with the person, 2 people in front of me when they said. So who would like to go first? Bridget, you are the fastest. Sure. Come on up here. Please state your full name. And as I said, folks online, if you want to raise your hand, we'll come to the Zoom attendance right after Bridget is done.
Okay, for the sake, can you hear me? Everybody? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yep.
For this, I'm Bridget Meyer. I live on Pleasant Street. For the sake of brevity, I'll read what I wrote for Front Porch Forum. Apologies if you've seen this already, but here we go. I will attend the City Council meeting on Wednesday evening and will advocate strongly for a rental registry. I own a duplex in Winooski, which I purchased in 1978. Winooski established a rental registry about a decade ago, and the quality of rental housing in Winooski has improved tenfold since then. I pay $120 a year per unit, and the units are inspected by professionals from the fire department every 4 years. There is substandard housing in Essex Junction. A rental registry will improve housing quality and is good for everyone. This is a public health and safety issue and deserves to be implemented for the common and community good. Please educate yourselves by reading Planning Commission and Council minutes and attending the meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about my experience with the Winooski Registry. I have questions about who will inspect. I believe the fire department is well equipped to handle the inspections, while the city seems to want to make another department to inspect, or you're suggesting to do it under community development. right? Okay. I truly think, in terms of my experience with Winooski, the fire department does it extremely well. They're very, very professional. From the comments I've seen online, people barging in and inspecting, that doesn't happen at all. People make appointments, they come in, they inspect, they tell you what you need to improve, you do it, they come back and they say, okay, you're all set. I hope that this program, if implemented, will be self-supporting. I don't see why it can't be, so I'm really hopeful for that. And if you had asked me a decade ago when Winooski proposed this registry, I would have voted against it. I definitely would have as a property owner, but not now. I've seen the units next to me improve in quality. And that's what we need to do.
Thank you, Bridget.
Yep.
Online, I saw Beth Ann Lawrence first, and I apologize if I get folks out of order, but we will get to you.
Okay, thank you. This is Andy Lawrence. Sorry about the name, but either way works. We'll know who you mean. And I just wanted to say, Bridget, you're one of my favorite neighbors. And so this is, even though I disagree with you, love you, Bridget. I feel like one of our biggest problems in the city is cost of living for renters and non-renters. And I don't think we need extra costs. And I don't think, although I'm sure there are bad units somewhere, we do have ways of dealing with it. I don't think we need costs. I'm a landlord of one unit attached to my house. Perhaps this could be good for larger units where the owner doesn't live there, something like that, but I think we don't need this.
Thank you.
That's all.
Okay. Jess on the floor. Right up here, yes, please.
Come on up.
If you can stand after sitting on the floor for so long. Right over here.
But okay. My name is Jess Wizlowski. I live in the Junction on Redwood Terrace. I have a bunch of questions for my mom, who is a town resident and also owns a condo that she rents. So first, like, some of the questions are, I think in the last slideshow that was presented back in December or November when this first came up, it noted that the majority of units are owned by just a few landlords. The majority of, like, the most landlords have only one unit. Is that the right way of saying it, Chris? Like, the majority of landlords have only one or two units.
Well, I don't know for now.
Okay, I think it was in the slideshow that is online currently on the Junction's website. So the point that my mom wanted me to help her make is that small-time landlords are going to be the most impacted financially. Many of these people are retirement age, nearing retirement age. This was part of their retirement, like their ability to pay for retirement. And it's the kind of cost or burden that could lead people who have such options as creating an accessory dwelling unit or renting out a condo to no longer do that, put it in the market and get out of being a landlord. And the problem with that is those are some of the most affordable units probably available. The big time market rate landlords are the ones who have no problem maybe picking up some of these repairs. But if you have a small window, and one thing that my mom has brought up as a concern is that the state changes code all the time. So it goes from you can't have a flat handrail, you now have to have a curved handrail, and like small changes that are constantly updated. And she had a question like, what's going to trigger the inspections? Is it a legal change because the state decided to make a curved handrail requirement? And does that mean units now all have to do an update and everybody in the registry is going to be checked to make sure they change the handrail requirements? Or is it that it is when your time is up and you're being inspected on year 4? Also, in the earlier presentation,
You're over 2.
I'm sorry, in the earlier presentation, they said it was a yearly visit. That would mean 6 units a day this person has to visit. I don't know when they'd have time to do paperwork or take EMS calls. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Taylor Wessels. And if it's not If it's not you, Taylor, just let us know who you are.
This is Taylor Wessels. My home is in Essex Junction on Corduroy Road. All people deserve safe housing, whether it's a young professional, a family, or someone staying in a short-term rental, or a retiree. We don't rely on complaint-driven enforcement alone for cars or professional licenses, and we shouldn't rely on it for something as important as the roof over someone's head. Proactive inspection of rental properties is the most effective and equitable way to ensure safe housing for all, including children and people who may not feel empowered to register a complaint with a government entity. All people deserve safe housing. I'm not a renter or a landlord, but I feel it's in the best interest of all people in Essex Junction that Essex Junction is known as a safe place for all people to live.
Thank you. Sir, come on up. Second row in the gray sweater, jacket. Watch the TV. It is something I can't wait to change.
Hi, my name is Jeff Rubman, and this is Brad, my son. We own Autumn Poland, which is a 300-unit complex, and we're hoping to build another 117 units beginning in April. So it'll be a 400-unit complex. We go through 5 annual inspections every year. We get a sprinkler system inspected, a fire alarm system inspected, a fire extinguisher inspected, boiler inspections, elevator inspections, which are enforced on us yearly already, that we have 5 inspections. If we add this inspection to us, it would add $50,000 to the budget. That's what it will cost us a year, which obviously we would push off to tenants, which is what will happen, unfortunately. We probably will be inspected once every 5 years because we're new units. We keep our units A+ as best we can. We go through all of our inspections without any trouble. And so it'll come down that I'll get inspected once every 5 years for $250,000, which doesn't seem to be appropriate. The mechanism of inspecting 400 units is time consuming for your inspector, and hopefully he'll be licensed to inspect because there's certain parts of you can't do without a license. We have to notify all our tenants 48 hours beforehand before we can get into their units. And then 70% of our tenants have dogs. So if they're not there, we have to deal with their dog. So I just think the mechanism is difficult as well. So I hope you give it serious thought. And maybe there's some different way of approaching 400 units than there is 2 units, because the costs are very heavy.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Go ahead, Brad.
I'll just add quickly, Brad Rubman, you say that you want the program to cover its cost, the cost to cover the program. The cost, if you multiply it out, it's going to bring in $235,000 a year to the town, to the city. I can't believe this program will cost anywhere near $235,000. There should be an inspector, maybe a vehicle, it sounds like. And I don't know, there might be a little bit else, but it's nowhere near $235,000. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Online, Lydia Kenny.
Hi, thank you. I'm a renter in Essex Junction, and I'm in agreement with this proposal, but my concern is that this fee will be passed on to renters, as the gentleman before said, with affordability, with rent being so high. I would like to see it prevented from being passed on to the renters themselves. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Sure. Have a seat.
Thank you.
Don't be shy out there.
My name is Lee Barnett. I've been a resident of Essex Town originally back in '98. I then moved to Junction about 15 years ago. I have a place right down the road right here. I'm totally against this proposal. You cannot compare this to Winooski because of the massive gentrification that went on in Winooski, let alone if you go the other side of Mallets Bay Avenue. I don't know if those units have ever been improved in the last 20 years. It's not even comparable. We don't want to compare ourselves with Barry, do we? Winooski, Burlington. I think this is a massive grab of power by the government, quite frankly. It's an intrusion on our private property rights, one of the foundations of America.
So you're
going to
addressing-
pass.
You're addressing me, not the crowd. Thanks.
Okay. I have my house here, who I'm renting the entire house at a pretty good rate. It's a nice facility. My 3 kids who graduated from this school. By the way, I'm a public high school teacher for over 25 years. I teach social studies. I know exactly what this will lead to. You're going to have to hire somebody. You're going to have to then enforce codes. Who knows what that code is going to be? Remember when they raised the handrails that went up an inch across condos all over? I have a moving company. I had to deal with moving people's stuff. Simple costs that you don't see, like moving out of a 2-bedroom condo. Not everything fits coming down those stairs now because they've raised the handrails. People have to remove the handrails to get me to move some of those condos that were built in the 70s. It happens all the time. Those are hidden costs. All kinds of hidden costs. If we don't have a professional who's going to inspect, they don't have any idea of really what the cost is. Now, if you're a handyman, obviously you're going to make some money off this. The rest of us are going to pass the costs on to the renter, who actually the poor people are the ones who end up always burdening the costs. And ultimately, this is exactly what this will lead to as everybody passes the costs on down the line.
All right, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Enjoy the day, guys.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. Is there anyone online? I don't see anyone online, so anyone else? Yep, sure. Come on. Sorry, you were just outside my view until the last second.
Buddy Gamble.
I both forget.
Buddy Gamble, 6 Athens Drive. I have an accessory unit in my basement. Chris, I hear the 3 things that you're trying to accomplish with this: life and safety, inventory, connecting landlords. I agree with Lee. I think I agree with the folks who had to head out as well. There's mechanisms in place for that already. If it's a larger facility, you're getting all those things inspected. If it's a smaller facility like my own, then if you're going to do things above board, you're going to register, you're going to be a part of this. If you don't want to be in the system, then you just won't register. So you're not going to have any way of getting the inventory. You're not going to have any way of controlling the life and safety. It seems like an extra level of bureaucracy that's being added with no added benefit. I'm adamantly opposed to this on all levels, big and small. I think the small guys are going to feel it. I think the renters are going to feel it. I think it's just more fluff in the city that doesn't need to be there. I think I didn't do the math in my head, but the cost that was quoted earlier is astronomical, and it just seems like a bunch of fluff. Just for the record, I did not receive a postcard. I did not receive any notice of this. Andy Lawrence, who spoke earlier, was the one who let me know this was happening. So I live in the Junction. I'm a landlord in the Junction. That broke down, so it's a little frustrating. I've got to head out, but thank you for the time.
Sure. What's your name again?
Buddy Gamble.
Buddy Gamble?
Gamble, Gammal.
Oh, thank you. Yep.
Buddy's real first name.
Yep.
So. Thanks.
Thanks. I was going to check online one more time. Yes.
I'm Meg Armstrong. I'm not a resident of the village anymore. I am an owner of Whitcomb Farm. We have 2 units down there presently. And I am totally against this proposal. We work really hard to keep our units up, but there is already all this in place at a state level. The fire marshals do a great job. One of our units is an ancient house, so I deal with lead-based paint stuff. The health department does a great job on that. I see no reason to duplicate this at the village level. I think it gets, I read through the ordinances, and it seemed very gray as to what would be enforced. And it's not just $120 that's going to get passed down to the tenants. It's the landlord's time to meet with them. It looked like there was almost a month-long window that the inspector gave himself to give you back a report. So if you bought new property, you could actually be out of rental income for almost up to, I believe, 3 months by the time you notified them that you bought the property, then got an inspection, then got a report back and a permission to rent. So that's huge. That's all going to contribute to higher rental costs. And
So that was.
I think it's a solution in search of a problem that we don't have here.
So that example, I just want to make sure I get that down so we can look at that. The example you just gave is you buy a property, there's a transfer.
There's a transfer and then if you
And then you
wanted
have
to
to
rent that
notify,
property out,
and
you
then-
need to,
right, so-
and they give themselves a month to do the inspection, a month for the report. All of a sudden that's 3 months after you've gone through the closing before you can even rent your property out.
Okay.
So it's not $120, and there's a lot of time involved with the landlords it's a lot more than that. And that, I heard the renter, who would like to make sure that doesn't happen. That's going to happen. That's the way the world works.
I understand. Well, we're not getting into answering, but thank you for that.
Right.
We did write down the scenario, so we're going to look into that. Yes.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes.
My name is Michael Meown, resident of Essex Junction. I am here to just state my opposition to this plan, specifically for a lot of the reasons mentioned by several of the thoughtful people here. I appreciate the idea of improving rental, safety and all that. We have all of these things through the state already. My particular primary concerns are the idea of a complaint-based inspection. We've had neighbors make very false claims about things we've done to our home and our property that have cost us time and money. And I just find that just the worst possible model you could go by, because, and then on top of that, an inspector can make a decision as to who they think is suitable or not. Renters have all sorts of mechanisms to protect themselves through the state. And I do want people to have safe housing. I'm not against any of that. But with that said, short-term rentals, if you have a residence and you are renting something and we rent a bedroom, which helps pay for our kids' college, which is thousands of dollars, we're citizens, we're trying to be dynamic and do things for ourselves. At the end of the day, people that stay with us, they voluntarily choose to. We've gone through all the appropriate inspections for our home to be safe. We live there. And so it goes back to this idea that if you're going to create a system which is just fraught with the potential for corruption, not really solving the problem, costing taxpayers even more. I mean, I'm from New York. I thought I paid a lot of taxes there. I love Essex Junction. Boy, do we pay a lot in taxes. And all this will get passed on to citizens, to renters, whether people like it or not. So I just want to leave it there. Thank you.
What was your last name?
Meehan.
How do you spell that?
Meehan.
Okay, thanks. I'm looking online just so I'm diligent about that. Anyone else in the room?
Yep.
Richard, I'm sorry, in front of Richard. Yes, ma'am. Come on up. Thanks. And then you, sir, and then Richard.
Thank you
Hi,
very much.
sure.
Hi, I'm Cindy Provost. I do not live in Essex, but I have two rental units or buildings in Essex. I used to own a property in Burlington that I rented. And like you said, Burlington's had a program like this for a long time. And that program, I did not support landlords at all. I'm totally opposed to this. For that reason, but not only that reason, I've listened to all these other people speak and they're right on the money. It's going to raise costs for tenants. It's going to raise costs for landlords. It's going to cost landlords all this grief and agony when we do have state. All my buildings have been totally updated to code, and that's why we have a code. The program in Burlington, they want you to pay every year, which is what you're proposing, but they come to your place every 5 years. And otherwise, you don't see anybody. They don't know anything. It's fraught with problems that just, as everyone has said, gets passed on to landlords and tenants. Landlords have a hard enough problem keeping their places presentable and everything with all of the tenant problems we have, and all of the programs that are there for all the informed, educated tenants that try to rip us off and screw us. So not to be blunt that way, but we already have to deal with that. And it happens all the time, as property owners know. And oftentimes we have very little recourses because the tenants get all the rights these days. And it's going to get worse, I hear. So something like this is just penalizing landlords further. It's not improving, like they said, it's gonna pass on to tenants, because I'm not gonna take that and have to pay it myself. They're gonna pay it. Because
Okay.
I'm not gonna lose that. My apartments, I price fairly for my tenants. I don't make them my family because it's not good practice with tenants, but
You're getting,
my,
you're about at time.
yeah,
Thank you.
my properties are under what everyone else's are because I treat people well.
Okay.
And I think people should respect that of landlords, that people do try to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Rich, we're gonna go with this gentleman here first. Sorry. And then we're gonna go online because I just saw someone raise their hand, but I won't forget you.
Mike Hopwood. I'm a landlord, have been for 24 years here in Essex Junction. Lived here myself in one of my units before I started renting it. Have a couple of units here in town. So we heard that all this stemmed from one person asking for this registry. That was like one of the justifications for it. We were given a lot of data about how many units are in Essex Junction and how many people rent, but there was not one bit of data about how many complaints have been received about units in Essex Junction. So I'm just wondering, how has this whole thing come about based on one person asking for it? If I ask tonight for my taxes to go down, I'm not.
Stay later.
I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm just saying that it just seems remarkable to me that this whole thing has come about because of that. And it's going to be a serious cost to landlords that's going to be passed on. And I know that's been mentioned a couple of times, but every day we hear on the news about how the government is trying to fight inflation. This is inflation. This is exactly what inflation is. It's when costs are added to something that's working perfectly well, and for no good reason, the cost goes up. And I think that the city council really, really needs to think about that, because it's going to be a lot more than the $120 a year.
About 5 seconds. Sorry.
Sorry?
There's about 5 seconds left. Can we wrap up?
I'll wrap up. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cecilia Polanski, online. I'll give you a couple minutes to.
Fine, yeah, okay. I'm the Cecilia Polanski and her husband, John Heermans. We rent 2 properties here in Essex Junction since 1988, and we are adamantly opposed to this new regulation. And I agree entirely with the last gentleman so some people complain. They have the right to complain, and what you want to do is set up a mechanism whereby somebody can complain and you can follow up on the complaint, just like they did in Burlington recently with that tenement house and they shut them down. If somebody doesn't comply with your regulations, then shut them down. But don't penalize people. We have one unit at $1,100 and one unit at $800. This is reasonable rental. These are for people who can't afford, and we keep them up. We do everything. So don't make this into like obligation. Every year we're going to put that, and they're going to make these. It's about corruption too, because this opens the door to enormous amount of corruption with contractors who are going to do the work and with your inspectors. So I'm against this, and I would say that this is just a bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you. What's next in the room? Oh, Richard, sorry. Yes.
And then the woman in the purple sweater.
Oh, okay. Are you speaking as a resident, landlord, or firefighter?
Speaking as the landlord and resident.
Okay.
So I do want to point out that I do have concerns about how this was staffed. the biggest concern I have is as this was being worked through the community planning process, the state was actually changed the process of how they were doing it, moving it from the health department, which seemed to get missed, over to the state fire marshal.
That was not missed.
Okay. Through that process, as they were working through it, the website is set up as a complaint base. There's actually a button to click to submit a complaint for any tenant that feels they're not being taken care of at this point. So there is already a state process that does exist in this process that is complaint based. So we're going to take that from the state, which we already pay the tax for, and we're going to move it to the village, and we're going to add a cost to all the landlords that already, we're going to then pass it down to their tenants. So I have concerns with it there. I also have concerns as a resident in the sense of if the city lists the number one objective of the rental registry is to protect the lives and safety of residential renters, by moving the registry under the Essex Junction Fire Department, the city has an opportunity to initiate a program that would raise the safety, not for those who rent in our community, but for the community as a whole by adding somebody who's actually there 24/7 instead of leaving it as a on-call department with nobody administrating the department. That's it.
Just writing down. Sorry, I'm not ignoring you.
Nope, you're good. That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Let me check online. Yep. Yes, please come on up.
Ma'am.
Or just right in front and sit
Yes.
if you like.
Hello.
Thanks. Hi.
So, my name is Diane Stevens, and I'm a landlord in Essex Junction. I'm not in favor of the program. I don't really understand a lot of this, what's being put on the table. There seems to be such a disconnect of these rules and regulations everyone's developing for a good cause. But it comes right down to it. Landlords aren't the enemy. We have folks renting from us. It's too many gray areas you're putting on our plate. And a lot of it goes down to folks that are renting. We can only absorb so much. And a lot of these folks that rent from us anyway, they've grown up in Essex. Their parents are in Essex. Folks are retired. They're working full time. This is such a black and white conversation. But it comes down to the landlords and the folks that rent from us. I mean, what do you want? It doesn't make sense to me that so much of the pressure that folks want to see the right thing, again, is being put onto the landlord and the renter. It's almost like you want a gated community or something. Everyone wants things a certain way. And that sounds grand. I have nothing against it except we're going to have to fund it. It just doesn't make sense to me it just seems to be a disconnect in a lot of areas. And I think there's a lot more of that needs to be explored before you ask the landlords to pick all this up. Because again, it comes down to folks that are renting. As I said, we can only absorb so much.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Checking online again. Nothing online. Anyone in the room? Don't be shy. Come on up.
Skip Lamore.
Skip Lamore.
I have a small duplex here in town, and we have some young tenants that are working there, both them doing a great job working, trying to save money. We've kept our rents down as a result of trying to help those folks out, because we do realize the reality that rent is really expensive. And much what's been already said here today is just another cost that's going to be pushed on to the tenants, unfortunately, here. And the obvious too, it's on the news all the time. The governor's always preaching it. There's not enough housing out there. And I think you're going to be driving people out if you keep finding these ways of, increasing the costs here. And the other thing that hasn't been touched on that I haven't heard about anyways is, where is this inspection list, this criteria that you guys are going to have so that we can see what you guys are looking for? Is that out there, or is that something you guys have already thought through, or is there something out there hard copy?
I believe it is, and we'll get that as soon as we close the comment. We'll see if we can.
Okay.
See if I can clarify that for you after this.
Okay. Well, in closing, I'm opposed to this. I don't think it's a great idea.
Okay. Thank you. Somebody just raised their hand right next to me though a minute ago. Oh, sir, come on up with the hat. Yes.
My name is Al Perella. I live at 20 Maple Street, just down the road here. I'm opposed to this proposal. It's mostly financial. is what I'm looking at. I think there's enough of inspections going on already. I rent to a lot of Section 8 people, and they have a whole inspection program before those people move in. And my apartments pass all the time. I was 30 years in Burlington, thrilled to get out. I mean, I sold specifically to get out of there because of the regulations. And we were on the 3-year plan at that time because they said my apartments were always in good shape and we weren't on the annual. But we paid the fee annually. They came every 3 years. They had nothing to write up, so I was good for another 3 years. So I am opposed to this. It's a financial thing. I listened to Scott do his budget presentation a couple days ago. Affordable housing was a subject in there. This morning there was an article on the radio about affordable housing again, and this flies right in the face of affordable housing. It's working directly against affordable housing because the tenants will pay. I know we heard from a person that said you want to not have the fee passed on, but this is a business. I mean, it becomes a business. So we've been doing it for 35 years. It's a business. If you keep absorbing the taxes and keep absorbing all these fees, you're out of business, is what you are, basically. So I am opposed to it. Thank you. Thank you.
Sir. Oh, blue coat, you said, sorry.
Yeah, blue coat. Yeah, right. He's got it.
Hi there.
Good evening. My name's Brett Grabowski. I'm a property owner here in the village, own several apartments, and hope to be developing several more here in the future. I'm kind of just reiterating a lot of the comments that are been given this morning. Cost is a huge issue, and all these costs will get passed directly on to renters. But it's not just the $120 a month, but it is, as the Rubens explained when they were sitting down here, there's a lot of other costs that go along with basically these inspections and timings and notifications of tenants. I think this, you're also duplicating a lot of been discussions about over the last year, how everything is being passed to the state fire department, state fire agencies. That is a program that is actually working very well. There is an online complaint system. If tenants feel that they're aggrieved and they need to complain about an issue, they certainly have the means to notify the proper authorities. And it's mandated that the fire marshals do come out and review every single complaint that is there. A lot of the other issues is a lot of these apartments in the area are already subject to extensive inspections. Elevators, sprinklers, alarm systems, bank inspections, insurance inspections, boiler inspections. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So what you're proposing is a gigantic duplication in the process that is already happening to ensure that these buildings are all up to code and are meet the goals of being safe for residents. If you look at the list that you list in regards to the objectives of the program, like I said, there's duplication here. I think to protect the life and safety of all residents and renters, those are already being met by other agencies. If you look at, as you go down through and develop an inventory of units, who is that inventory for? I mean, is it just that the city wants to know how many units out there are for rent?
You're over time, but just
okay.
I
So
understand
there's a lot of other ways to do that. And then the third item, improving opportunities that just, I mean, we all have access to the proper trades to get things fixed. So I think ultimately, I think the board just really needs to look back and see that there's a huge duplication of processes that already exist at a gigantic cost in a time when housing is extremely expensive and inaffordable.
Okay, thanks. Yes, sir. You can come on up over here. You can make it across. Check online too. Hi there.
Hi, my name is Elton Ernest. We live in the Junction, Upland Road, and We, my wife and I, inherited our house when my parents passed on, and so we've spent a lot of money upgrading our house to get it current. We'll call it just current. I think that what's being missed here, I feel like that people are, call it the government, is attacking us, and we're being put on our heels with being accused of not having good properties and stuff like that. This is increasing our costs. First of all, what some people haven't said already is, as homeowners, if I feel like there's a negative connotation when people are talking about short-term rentals and stuff like that, and people stereotype it with Airbnb.
One second, sorry. Folks, if you're going to talk, can you go down the hall, please? We can't hear in here. Sorry to interrupt you.
Whether it's Airbnb, and then there's probably people that know there's other platforms for short-term rentals. We've gotten our place up to, and we are encouraged to keep our property at a really good level. So you get reviewed online, you have word of mouth with people staying at your property. So there's a lot of incentives for keeping your property in good condition. This is inflationary. There's no question. We know this, right? Anytime you add costs to things, that's inflationary.
You're a little over. So if you have a point that hasn't already been made.
I want to reiterate with lots of people before that I'm against this. Anyways, I think
Okay.
I think I made some
Yeah,
points.
absolutely. Understood. Thank you. Just going to peek online again. Anyone else in the room? Sure, come on up. Just one sec.
How are you? My name's Chris McEwing. I've done property management of some apartment rentals in the Junction for, more than 10 years now. And I want to agree with a couple people before me. I'm opposed to this. It feels like this is trying to solve an issue that doesn't exist. It's also already dealt with on the state level, and there's a reason for that. There's licensed professionals that know what to look for, that know how to enforce things. And, every landlord I've talked to, there's no way that I see this as staying at $120 a year. That just seems like something that could easily jump. In addition to that, it's definitely something that's going to increase the cost of housing, which is something that we've consistently said we want to work on.
1 second. If you're going to speak, please go out in the hallway. Otherwise, you might have to forfeit your opportunity to address us. We really need to get through this.
That's pretty much it.
That's
everything
it.
I was trying to
I didn't
say.
mean to interrupt you.
No,
okay, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. We're going to go online. I think this is Gabe Handy.
Incorrect. His son's Sean, but that's okay.
Okay. Well, sorry, Sean Handy?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So what I would like to just bring up is it reminds me of a situation I ran into some years ago when during these inspections that you're proposing, you're going to find situations where tenants have created their own horrors, and ultimately what's going to happen in those situations. What happened with me is I found a situation where I had a tenant that was a hoarder. She had failed to close her windows because she couldn't get to them, froze some pipes, and I proactively reached out to Sharon Kelly to find out what I could do in this situation. Her answer to me was, well, I can fine you until you get it fixed, but there's nothing I can do to the tenant. So I feel like this is going to create situations where landlords are going to be put in a position that their only answer is to get rid of the tenant. So you're going to end up with more evictions, more cost of housing, because let's face it, once that apartment is turned over, that's going to cost a lot to fix, and the rent's going to get raised. So I don't feel like this is a good idea. Tenants already have the avenues they need to reach out to the health inspector, the fire marshals, whatever it is, if they have an issue. And this is just going to create more issues than what you realize and more costs ultimately on the tenants. I am adamantly opposed to this.
Thank you. Sir. And then, sorry, we'll go right to you after. Thanks. Just need
Hi,
your-
I'm John Prabancha. I rent in Essex Junction. Have been for over 30 years. I'm also a plumber, licensed heating. I did own an apartment house in Winooski. Sold it a couple of years ago. I didn't like what was going on down there. I take care of my own apartment. I do my own the plumbing and the heating and air. Take care of it for the owner. They treat me right. I treat them right. I've been in more houses than anybody here's. You know, I've done everything. I've found dead people down in the cellar before. I had to get CPR and the whole bit. I've been around. I've been doing this for over 50 years. Essex Junction, to me, seems like the cleanest and one of the best places to be, and that's why I'm here. I can live any place I want to. I'm retired now for the most part. If there's not a good reason to be doing this, other than money, why do it? And I don't know if there's a problem here, but I haven't seen any. And I would probably know it before you guys would. I've been in a lot of places. Yeah. Anyway, that's what I got to say. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
You're going to go on to, there's a phone caller online. It's 6547. If that's you, you can star 6.
Unmute
Okay.
with star 6.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. My name's Daryl Montague. I'm on both phone and video, but I'd first like to, I'm a property manager in both the Junction and the Essex Town. I'd like to just, in an effort of time, I just want to state and duplicate what Jeff and Lee Barnett and many have had to say about effectively this is a solution looking for a problem. There's an old saying that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. In Essex Junction, I don't believe you have a problem. I'd like to ask the question to the city council of how many actual issues have there been in Essex Junction? I don't mean Winooski. I don't mean Burlington. I mean Essex itself. How many have there already were? And to remind the council that this is covered by the state. I believe it was Act 181 that was signed into law back in 2022. This is already covered. We don't have what's the purpose behind this other than creating more money, which will be, as stated several different ways tonight, and I can't reiterate more. It's, as you must know, it's going to go. The end result is it goes to the renter, not the landlord. They got to cover their costs. That's what I got.
Thank you, Daryl. Yes. Hi.
I just have a couple of quick comments.
Sure.
My name's Joan Williamson. I own an accessory apartment on Main Street. Sorry.
Joan Williams.
Joan Williamson. I
Yes.
live on Main Street, and I have an accessory apartment. My comments, I don't think have been mentioned. I am totally opposed to this. I have just one accessory apartment. If they need anything, I take care of it. I work full-time. He works full-time. I'm not sure who has to take time off if an inspector is coming, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to pay this every year. I definitely will pass it on. And the other thing is just trying to get work done on my house that needs to be done. When I need to have something done, I could call 10 contractors and get almost no phone calls back. So to be fined for being non-compliant if I can't hire someone feels ridiculous. Because if you're going to have a zoning change and you have 2,000 units in Junction, and we're already stretched really thin in the trades, to have somebody come in when I've got 1 unit and 0 pull, and I'm going to get fined for that, that feels really unreasonable to me. So I'm opposed.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. No more online. Anybody else in the room? Sir, in the back with the hat was the fastest draw. It's impressive.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think it'd be quicker because we've been doing this for a while. You'd think people would have the.
Well,
But
I got to agree with everybody but the first lady.
Can you give us your name? Sorry.
Rick, which one's going here?
This one's fine.
Either one.
Rick Knapp, Knapp.
All right.
I own a small place, 4 apartments. I've only been at it 45 years. I came to town 65. Essex Junction was a little smaller. It's grown. I've seen it. It's been good. But we're getting into something here that everyone in the room here, I believe, is all in agreement. I haven't seen anybody against it, that we don't want this. It's going to get passed down to the tenants. Everybody, it costs. As far as keeping up the properties and everything, you drive around Essex, they look pretty good compared to other places. And I bought the place in '79, and at that time I was going to buy up a bunch and didn't. But I said one thing there, that I wouldn't own a stick in Burlington, and I wouldn't own a stick in Winooski either. Essex, I've had for 45 years. Tenants, they get a complaint, they know where I am. I was in Florida this fall, I got a complaint. It was taken care of within hours. But that's the rapport I have with the tenants. They love it. They aren't stepping out of their front door onto asphalt. There's a grass out there. They can go out and sit. They like it. Rent, they're down. I ain't gonna hose anybody. Why? They're trying to get along too.
Okay.
So this just adds to the cost on the monthly rental.
Okay.
It's not right. Yeah, I think someone stated that you're looking for a problem with a solution to a problem you don't have.
Gotcha. Thank
Thank
you
you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Somebody else back there. I saw a hand earlier.
I'll yield to Deb.
Deb, come on up. Jeff, eventually you're gonna have to come up here. Eventually you're gonna have to come up here. We'll see.
Which one?
Either one.
This one? Okay. Hi, my name is Deb Bilodeau. Thank you for holding this meeting tonight. I've been in the town of Essex and the village of Essex, city of Essex Junction now for 45 years, 38 of those in the city on Maple Street over here. I've been a landlord for 40 years in 4 counties in the state. I had property in Burlington when they started their rental program in Burlington, and I found it to be a disappointment, and it appeared to me that it was more about money for the city than anything. And that's kind of what I'm feeling about this program in Essex Junction. Because I've been here so long, I think I've seen a lot of properties come up, be built over the last few years. We have a really great housing stock in Essex Junction, and love you, Bridget, but I oppose this. I think this is not good. We have a housing crisis in the state. We have an affordability crisis in the state, and all we're doing is passing costs on to the people that can least afford it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to say it because we're at 8 o'clock. We're an hour and a half in. So I can't stress enough. I don't want to shorten the amount of time. So if you agree with someone in front of you, give me the highlights. We are, like I said, we are keeping diligent track of everything everybody says. Come on up. Sure. Steve, come on up.
Thank you. Steve Eustace on Wilkinson Drive. I'm against the program. I think it sounds like a great idea. When I was on the board, we were often advised by the manager to don't create a bureaucracy if you don't have to, because things always grow over time beyond the original intent and get complicated. Going to one of the points people made on statistics, not only would it be great to see the statistics on how many problems have been noted in some period of time, 1 year, 2 years, et cetera, but how many of those problems that were brought up or identified didn't get resolved. So if there were problems and they got resolved in a timely manner through the state process and all of that, then again, what's the need? And, you want to make a database decision. And I mean, it's great when we have public input and people suggest things, and it's great that people, commented way back when, and that's all great. But at the end of the day, it comes down to data. And if there isn't a problem, and if any problems that exist aren't getting addressed, maybe that's when you got to do something. So anyway, just echo the cost passing that everybody else said.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Goodrich.
Thanks, Raj. Thanks, everyone. Jeff Goodrich. Want to thank you for the opportunity to be heard. I trust you are also listening and that you'll take the input that you've been provided today. I also want to acknowledge the harm that's been caused by the people that hacked into the meeting. That was unacceptable, hateful speech that I'm sorry people had to hear.
Thanks for saying that.
Absolutely. I agree with so many that have spoken before me. I'm incredibly impressed by some of the former students, Richard Smith and others, who have spoke before me in opposition to this idea. The home that I happen to own is on an acre of land that I purchased to create an opportunity for some space so others would not develop it. I feel like the village city has changed a lot in the 30 years that I've been in this area. I don't think it's heading in the direction that many of the people that spoke before me would like to see it go in. I agree with much that has been spoken ahead of me, but not all. I do not agree with those that actually control a monopoly of rental properties in the area. I have to wonder about potential impact fees as being a consideration if there is a need for money. And then I would like to consider increasing impact fees if they exist, or creating them if they don't exist already. I think we also need to consider what's happening in Montpelier with the increase in property taxes that are coming. This seems like a very tragic time to be considering increasing costs. I am the newbie from some of the folks that spoke before me, but I agree with the sentiments of those that have been here for some time. I think we are trying to fix something that may not be broken. Thank you for the time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone know? Is there
Anybody
anyone
in the
still out
hall?
there?
Does anybody in the hall want to speak?
Anybody in the hall want to speak?
I'll make it quick. You're not in the hall. Go back in the hall, walk around, come in this door.
Kevin Collins. I've lived in Essex for 53 years. Manage a place for my folks. I think it's kind of funny because I think if you make it more complicated for the landlord, ultimately you make it more complicated for the tenant. And I can't imagine there's a lot of tenants out there that would be jumping at this to say, yeah, let's do it. Because I think ultimately, you got the cost, you've got, you do have salt of the earth tenants out there who are trying to rent places that are reasonable. And I think you make it more complicated for the landlord. Those costs are just going to ultimately go up, and you're going to lose that housing for those people. So that's just a comment I have, and ditto to everything before me.
Great.
For those who are opposed. So thank you.
Thank you. Just peeking online again. Trying to get better at that.
There's some open seats now, if anyone wants to come in. There's a few.
Is there anyone else? I'm not trying to say you have to, but if you want to, now's your chance. We are very likely to have another public hearing on this. So if it's not your last opportunity.
Sir, he just raised.
Sir, come on up. Hi there. Either microphone is fine. Just give
Okay.
us your name and.
Yeah, I'm John Giroux.
Okay.
And I'm totally against, because it's just more regulation and increasing costs. And a lot of these things are already covered, these inspections type of things. It's, there's a state and there's a program that it was like in 1978. Any older building older than that, you have to register to the state, it's inspected and so forth. So, and of course, all the other things that you guys talked about, others. So it's already covered. So this just makes it harder for the landlord because it's trying to do a good job is, it's not easy because the laws are for the tenant. And what do you do, just like someone else said, is that the tenant causes the problem. See, I've been renting for 50 years, so I know a little bit. And that's what I see. Okay? So what do you do? Because the laws are in, so if they damage the place, what do? It's hard to get out, because see, a lot of people know the laws. They don't pay, they ruin the place, and what do? And so it's hard. It's a hard business to be in to do it right. Now, yes, there's some maybe that let it go, but like a lot of them said, it's already covered. And this is a nice village. Okay, I've been living here since 1970 in the village. And so I'm totally against this because all it is the freedom of the people is being removed. This is just because we're losing our freedom. And this is one of the ways, because you're putting pressure, you're putting laws on people that we should not have. So I am, and I'm going to add another thing to it. I think it's totally wrong.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you. All right. I think we're going to, all right, this is going to be the last one. We're going to move on.
Just me. I'm Bruce Wyszynski. I own a place in Essex on Maple Street.
Would you mind spelling your last name?
Wishinski.
Thank you, sir.
And I own a place in Burlington too, and so I deal with the code enforcement over there. And kind of piggybacking on the problem of like there's a solution here for a problem that isn't occurring. I feel like a lot of the inspections that I go through, they tell me to fix some stuff and I fix it, and then they come back 3 years later and they tell me a bunch of other stuff to fix and I fix it. There's always something that needs to be fixed, but a lot of times it's the same thing that was just fixed, or it's like the code has changed or they missed it the first time. So it's a matter of the people that are doing the inspections have a hard, it's not consistent. And they have several inspectors over there. Some people get this and some people don't get that. It just seems like a big hassle. And it seems like a lot of times they come there and if there's nothing wrong, they just find something wrong just to make you come back and fix it, like every single time. So that gets frustrating. So it seems like it may be just a big waste of time for people. Obviously, there's some landlords maybe that don't fix stuff and there's problems, but like everybody else has said in here, there's ways for tenants to make those complaints. And maybe if there was more of a system of following up on the complaints that are made, like someone else just suggested, that would be a better solution than saddling landlords with all these new expenses. Because just like the previous person said, Vermont is a renter state. It's not a landlord state at all. And to be honest, a lot of people that own rental units or, that are doing renting in Vermont, they could be one mortgage payment away from going into debt. And if they can't get a certificate of occupancy over some stupid thing and they don't have a tenant in there, that could be a huge problem for them and basically for the housing market. So
Okay, thank you. Okay. I think at this point, I am going to, unless there's anybody else, I'm going to close the.
Raj. So I'm a renter. I'm not a landlord, and you've heard from a lot of landlords, and I'm not gonna say whether I'm for it or against it, but as the resident, would you like me to go sit in that chair?
If you want to say something. Yep.
Just
You know what? You have a microphone. You can sit there.
Okay, sure. Thank you. I'll try to make it as short as possible. I still don't know if I'm for or against this. I see the pros to both sides. I would not be thrilled with my rent going up, but I understand that those costs would be passed on to me, and I don't think it's just $120 a year registration fee. I think the landlords have to take their time into consideration as to what it takes to enact that policy, so on and so forth. I guess where one of my concerns comes in is there's a complaint-based system, and I would also be very curious to know how many complaints have been made within the city of Essex Junction. I happen to be a very talented person, and I can walk through my apartment and I know what's wrong with it, and I can bring it to my landlord's attention. Many people out there don't. So let's just say it was $120. It's $10 a month added to my rental, and it's almost like an insurance where I know that the building has been inspected by a professional. But I also see that I don't understand the $120 a month and being inspected every 4 years or every 5 years. It does seem like there's definitely a money problem, and we're kind of creating. So I think the rental registry may be good, especially for renters who don't know that there's a problem, that would need a professional to walk through with it and give them a little bit of security that the building that they're renting is safe. But I think the number that's been applied to it and the process that's been applied to it, I think there needs to be some refining. I think it's a good idea to help renters, but at the same time, I think you're putting a lot of work on the landlords, and I believe that needs to be looked at closer as well. So just from a renter's point of view, I know that a lot of people out there that can't walk through their apartment and say, that's not right. I happen to be one of the lucky ones that do have that talent, but I know a lot of my siblings, when I go visit my siblings' house, I end up making a lot of repairs on their house because they had no idea.
Remind me to have you over. All right, thank you.
So that's
Harlan.
Can I clear up one thing that you said, Harlan? Because you said 120 a month, and what we're looking at.
No, $10 a month to me, 120 a year.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
The way you
12
worded it sounded
months.
like you said 120 a month, so I just wanted to.
I might have. No,
That it's
that wasn't
clear
wasn't what I meant. I knew it was going to be $10, but even at $10 a month, that's a large insurance policy. Progressive is better.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to close the public hearing, and unless there's anything else, but first I'll ask Regina if she has anything else that we need to be doing with that before we close the public hearing portion of this.
Nothing else, just we'll give folks on Zoom 1 second. If they just don't know how to raise their hand, you go to the reactions feature and there's a raise your hand function in there. And I do have the comment from that the person put in the chat because they didn't know how to raise their hand. So we do have that documented.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything online. So I will go ahead and close the public hearing and we will move on to agenda item 5A. And I know this sounds weird, but this will be a discussion and consideration of rental registry and inspection ordinance. This is not the public hearing portion. This is the business portion for the council. So we have some options. I think do you have any introduction you want to do here with this, Regina? You don't, just giving you an opportunity.
Yeah, I think the information that you've got in your memo is pretty clear. And yeah, just in terms of process, procedure, the opportunities in front of you are to, if you so chose, is to adopt this ordinance as it is in front of you, make suggestions to change the ordinance. And of course, always there's the option to do nothing at this time. You could table the conversation to another point in time if you've got questions that you would want staff to take the time to answer. and provide back to you at a future meeting.
Is there anything any of the counselors want to add at this point or talk about?
Can I get some more clarity on the conversation regarding whether it should be in community development or in the fire department? It seems a little late in the game that the fire department piece is being brought in, so I'm trying to understand why they weren't at the table to begin with, and why, seeing that at the state level and at other municipalities, that the fire department is managing that program in those places.
Sure, I can answer from my perspective. So really it really came from the concept that the city council wanted to enhance the services around code enforcement more generally for the land development code. So as a reminder, in your current FY24 budget, there is a new full-time position that would do code enforcement work, rental registry, and health officer work, essentially starting January 1. And that budget has the lot fund paying for that for 6 months of that work. Because the theory being that there would be, as this whole program is developed, there would be a revenue source so that it's not a cost to the general fund directly. So the program has been established in that way. Throughout the process, staff has talked to a number of different departments and municipalities in terms of how this is done in other places. Chris provided that information in terms of how it's done in other places in his presentation. Yeah, so that's the direction that we've been on. It's the direction that the Planning Commission has been on, and that's where we've been.
Okay.
Chris, do you have anything you want to add to that? Chris Ewan?
So about the point about other municipalities having the fire departments having this program under their fire departments, that is mostly but not completely true. There are a few municipalities that have it in a separate department or under their general code enforcement branch. So the municipalities that have the rental registry and inspection program under the fire department tend to all have full-time fire departments, and I think that is one thing that was considered here in the past.
And when you say it's not always the case, is it, Chris, that the entire department is full-time, but there may already be a leadership structure of one to few on that department?
Well, I don't have the history behind whether they had a full-time fire department before, if the rental registry program was what tipped it over the edge, but as it currently stands, those tend to be the larger cities.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think the board, when this was initially discussed, was interested in having this. We had a situation where our longtime, essentially volunteer health officer retired. We also had a very strong push for many years that was pretty strongly renewed once we separated for ordinance enforcement. And traditionally, we've had a lot of complaints that aren't very well documented for some of the larger buildings and other rentals in the community. We did not have much of a code enforcement. That's not fair. We did not have the code enforcement mechanism that we're intending to have prior. So what we were trying to do is figure out, with the structure we have, and this, I'm just speaking for myself as the council, from the structure that we have, the issues we're dealing with, is there a way to start this up and cover that so it doesn't go to general fund? Because a lot of those issues are overlapping. and the state requires us to have a health officer, it has proved exceedingly difficult to have someone available as much as is needed. And they're remarkably busy. I don't know how Matt's been doing, but from what Sharon in the past and our former health officer have shared, and those things often overlap. So we're required to have that person on staff or available. If not, it falls to the chair of the governing body, which was me, or Andrew Pryor. And that's not tenable because we have jobs and you can't get paid. There were a lot of things that went into this and why it didn't go straight to the fire department. And I think Chief Gaborio is here, and we might have an ask to find out more information about how that might work, right, under the fire department, which I think is fair. But we didn't want, I mean, I'll speak for myself only, didn't want to contemplate at the time, because I didn't think we were ready, what would that pathway be? Do we start the community down that pathway of starting to add full-time employees to the fire department? So that is a little bit of, from my perspective as a board member, of how this ended up in community development, which really isn't that unusual. It does make sense in both areas. And as far as there's a few things that were mentioned over time. As far as the car goes, we really do have to address our 3 community development employees having to go out to properties and do community development work, and other city employees doing that work in unmarked private vehicles when they're going to do things like health inspections and things that require sometimes touchy subjects. So the savings of the fire department in the car may not actually be real because we may still need to add something for staff, and that's something we can figure out at a later date. I think for tonight, it'd be great to figure out, do we want to hear from Chief Gaborio, who's with us, I think, on Zoom, and do we want to see what the fire department can come up with for how it might work? What does that look like? If they've expressed an interest, which I think they have, then what does it look like what does that program look like? And then while they're doing that, we can assimilate everything we've heard tonight and come back at a later date and kind of go through it. So I don't know if, Chris, if you're available to join us for a few minutes to talk about this.
Yes, I can. I'm online now.
Great, thank you. So just wondering about your thoughts and whether you think it's feasible to get back to us with sort of a vision for how you think this might be able to operate, or a version of this might be able to operate under fire. And in your mind, what kind of time frame you would need to do that and what more information you'd require. I guess first I should ask, are you interested in doing that research?
Yes, I think as a department, we would be interested. Again, if this position were to come to fruition, from our perspective, the data that's gathered would certainly be of benefit to the fire department going into some of these apartments and getting a better feel for how these buildings are laid out. We have that data, or we have a database within our platform, our software platform in the fire department. And again, to me, it would make sense that this position would be underneath the fire department, so that you would have a full-time individual that would be enforcing, and yet, could also supplement and be available Monday through Friday, normal business hours, when that's probably our weakest time of the day.
Okay.
And when I say weak, I mean weak in that you probably have the least amount of individuals responding to fire calls during that period.
Sure. Any questions for
Not at the
on
moment.
this?
Nothing further.
Okay.
I have a couple. The first thing I want to acknowledge is, since I heard this a number of times in the public hearing about what the complaints look like, I do recall there's an example of complaints that was in a previous packet. I don't remember the exact date of said packet, but we were given the list of complaints that were coming through the health officer. And so that would be an example of some of the things that we're hearing from as a city. I want to acknowledge the fact that as a previous renter, my gut turns thinking about anything that would add to my rent. Back in that particular day, I did not have the means to absorb additional costs. Looking at where our budget is right now, I was prepared to arrive in this discussion asking about whether or not, if we were to really move this thing forward, if we move this forward on a complaint-based level versus the full-time moving it to fire, because I think we would end up seeing cost savings from the expenditure side that would help. But I do want to acknowledge that, I've seen like public complaints about some of I hear from the landlords that are here, and I appreciate there are so many good landlords, and a majority of landlords are good landlords. As a matter of fact, both companies that I rented from was a couple who lives down the street from me right now, and I rented their mom's house, what was their mom's house. And I rented a property in South Burlington from a company right over here on Railroad, that was right here on Railroad Street. And they were both very good to me and my family. But I see stories like I saw once a few months back, and somebody was complaining about the elevator not working in one of these buildings for 60 days.
65.
If that is truly the case with a state system that's been in place, and that did not help resolve that problem, then I question whether or not the existing programs that's out there are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Now, whether or not we need to be involved in that is a valid question, but it's one of the reasons why, it's one of the things that I think about when I think about whether or not we need a proactive process to try to get ahead of these kinds of problems. And I see that the rental registry being a proactive process. But again, coming back to one of my original thought, which was concerning, again, our overall budget, trying to figure out how to control the expenditures this year. If we stepped it in on a complaint basis, that would lessen the initial cost. But I think based on what I heard, based on some things that I would like to get more research from the chief, I would like to continue this conversation at a later date. I do not want to make a call on this tonight.
Yeah, I don't think that's possible. I don't think we're at a place where we can, just speaking for myself, I don't think we're at a place where we can make that call tonight. Let's see everybody that's on the screen. I think my impetus would be to not make a motion tonight as presented, and to ask, I'm not sure the right framework to go with, but to ask fire to kind of look over, and help me out, Regina, a little bit, look over what's been done and sort of what's proposed, and see how the fire department envisions that scope and what that looks like from a staffing and budgetary and process point of view. What are the similarities? What are the differences? Our budget has to be warned February 14th. So that feels like a big lift by then. I don't know, Regina, if that's something, if that date is I guess the board would have to decide if we're one way or the other, are we moving forward with it, and then it wouldn't much matter.
Yeah, so for right now, I think you can think about this in terms of the FY25 proposed budget. as a separate thing. And I'm saying that because it's, as the program is proposed in the FY25 budget, the program is cost neutral.
Right.
So the expenses are in there and they're offset by the annual rental fee. And if we don't do the program, we don't have those expenses and we don't have that revenue fee. So I think it's okay and if we do that program under the fire department, perhaps the specifics and the details of that look differently, but I think we would still be looking at it as a, and I'm saying this as a cost neutral program, and I'm saying that cost neutral to the general fund, to the taxpayer. Fully understand what we've heard from everybody tonight. This is not cost neutral to folks who are renters and landlords.
Right.
So I think it would be okay if we took the right amount of time necessary to think through both answers to the comments that you heard tonight from the public, as well as really giving the fire department some time to think through what this would look like if it were on their side, under their department.
Yes, and that's great because I've got, in addition to comments written down, about a dozen questions that I pulled out that I'm sure everybody else here does too, that, we might want to follow up on to kind of come back to. So I think that's a great, Chief Gaborio, do you need more than that as an ask? And Regina, do we need a motion for that, or can we just make the request?
I don't think you need a motion. What I would like to ask in terms of time frame is it's for you folks to give us some time to think through this and then get back to you and let you know when we can bring this back in front of you.
Yeah, I'd rather not put a date on it. So I agree.
We expecting this over a month or less
One
than a
second.
month?
Sorry, we're not at that point yet. I don't mean to be rude, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, Raj, Amber does have her hand up. I don't know if you've seen.
So you know what? Now I see it. There was a chandelier in my way. Sorry, Amber.
No worries.
Glasses.
No worries. So I had just two comments. One, I guess I'm still trying to understand the budget piece of if we choose not to go forward with this program at all. So not under fire, not under community, under ComDev. What is the implications of that from a budgetary standpoint due to the fact that we want to still make sure that code enforcement and health office is covered? So, and I understand that's something you got to mull over. I'm just throwing these out as things that I'd like to see addressed when we come back to have this conversation. The other thing is that there were a number of comments about the number of inspections that happen, the elevator inspections, the fire inspections, and what are we talking about in regards to inspections? I think what we're talking about is the rental housing code that is about 15 pages long, that is found on the website where this complaint procedure is. And so it would be, I think it's always helpful to kind of show to the public maybe a Cliff Note version maybe of some sort of what we're talking about here. It is more involved, obviously, than the state's inspection of elevators and the state's inspection of fire extinguishers and stuff like that. But what are we talking about? I know what we're talking about, but I think that question was asked, and so I'd like to make sure that we're incorporating that when we come back to talk about this again. Thanks, guys.
And maybe to the point of, if we have material on this on the CD website, to actually link to that code and the idea that this person would be a professionally trained. I don't have the full title in my head, but this wouldn't just be a city employee that was picked up to do this sort of. It would be someone we envision being trained on that particular code to a level, whether it's CD or fire. So I guess we'll make that ask. we'll let staff determine and let us know how much time you need for that, staff Chief Gaborio, and come back to us with what you come up with, and we'll table this for now. In the meantime, we'll try to get some answers to these questions and find a time to come back as a group and talk about the feedback we've gotten.
Can I just add one thing, Raj? Sorry.
Yes, absolutely.
Amber, thank you for bringing up that point about, so yeah, the program itself as contemplated right now in FY25 budget is cost neutral. But if the council chose to not do this at all, we would need some direction in the FY25 budget about what you want to do about code enforcement and health officer. So that does mean that by the 14th, we will have to have some kind of understanding of what is the base that you want to do on the code enforcement health officer side of things.
Gotcha. This is so that's in one meeting.
Yes, one meeting.
Marcus left at the right time, but does anybody want to talk about that right now, or do we want to come back and talk about that on the 14th?
I'd like to think some more.
Yeah, me too.
I think the 14th is fine.
Okay. So maybe we can mull that over ourselves in the meantime.
It might be helpful. I mean, I don't know, Regina, if it's helpful to just say, can we have some numbers, or do I need to do we need something else? If we were to say, keep the status quo as we're at right now, what's the budget look like? Meaning part-time health officer code as it is. And if we were to ramp up and say we need a full-time health officer and I don't know, a specific person for just code enforcement. I'm just making it up, honestly, at this point, because I don't know what the answer is. But here's the worst case scenario. Here's the current status of where we would be at, and maybe there's a halfway in between there. If we could get those potential numbers before the 14th, would be helpful.
Yeah, I think we can definitely put some scenarios together for you in your February 14th packet.
Okay,
Great.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. So we're not going to have any motions on that. All right, where's the agenda? Sorry, getting there.
Budget, I believe.
Right. 5B, discussion of FY25 general fund budget and public hearing warning. All right. Getting there. All right, Regina, do you have an introduction for this?
Yes, I do. So in your packet, you've got the third budget, proposed budget for FY25, general fund budget. And you've got a narrative on page 18 of that PDF. We have, you've got a summary at the top that talks about the changes that you asked for at your last meeting and what that puts us at for budget versus our current year budget. As it is, it's still a 7% budget increase and 7.4% tax rate increase for $190 for a $280,000 home. You see the changes that we made since the last time, and really want to point out that we did identify some errors in the budget, largely in the salary payroll tab. And that has certainly resulted in a reduction in the overall FY25 budget of about $53,000. I want to point out that that is a big change to what the library budget was specifically because of the library differential and how that was calculated in error. So we very much apologize for that. And that is, you can see those changes on the top of page 19. Also, at the last meeting, the council asked about what it would look like for the Brownell budget to be level funded and what it would look like for a 2% increase over FY24. The council has that memo from the library director. We will put that into this packet so that you've got that. Also, I wanted to make a note that we will also include the slides from Chris's presentation into this revised packet so that it is all online. Those things came in after the 48 hours before this meeting, so I didn't want to revise the packet beforehand. Also, the council asked for what it would look like if there was an admin allocation from the EJRP program fund to the general fund. At your last meeting, we weren't sure if we were going to have a chance to be able to look at that and see what that would look like. What you have in your memo is a suggestion of what that could look like. From a staff perspective, we're perfectly comfortable with doing that. And so we can go ahead and make that change if you recommend that we do that this evening. I think that is about it. Oh, other than this memo does say in your reading file, you have the very initial preliminary enterprise budgets. So these budgets are not approved until later in the fiscal year. The council does that approval, but we wanted to give it to you now just to see what that's starting to look like, so you can see what essentially folks are going to be paying from a water utility bill, in addition to what you're looking at for tax rate increase. I think that is it for me to start. I will say that both Wendy is here, Jess is here. If you've got any further questions for either of them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess we'll start with page 1. I'm wondering, as presented, these changes that Regina pointed out on the first page of the narrative in the chart, if the group is comfortable with those changes and wants to move forward with those.
I have a question about one of them.
Sure.
Specifically, the clerk's office, reducing the hours to 32 hours a week. I'd like to understand more about that particular impact. I mean, I know we all felt very fortunate when the clerk's office opened up here at 2 Lincoln, so I was a little surprised to see that they would be reducing the hours, but then again, I don't know how many people are coming through the door at which hours, so this may be an absolutely appropriate move, but I just want to understand it better.
So the idea there is that the city clerk would go down to 32 hours a week. The assistant clerk would stay as 40 hours per week. So I think we're feeling like the office itself would still be open 40 hours a week. So in terms of a service perspective, it would not lower when you can come in and do any business from that perspective. We think, based on the amount of folks coming in and working with us now, that this is probably going to work great. I think folks are still understanding that you can come to the city clerk's office as opposed to go to the town clerk's office for some services. But we think that, again, we're not saying that the clerk's office itself is going to be closed for less than 40 hours a week. We are just going to have one of the 2 full-time staff there go down to 32 hours.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so coming back to that, sounds like everybody's okay with those changes. So we'll incorporate those, or do you have another question? Do you have a question?
I just want to, again, I know that we had some concern at our last meeting when we were going through all these line by line by line, and the feeling that the nickel and diming wasn't really making a big difference in the bottom line. But in my opinion, how else are we going to get there? So in that spirit, the community meal and event for $10,000, as much as I love it more than anything, I'm just concerned about that, wondering if there's other ways to do it. Do we move it to the summer and just do hot dogs and hamburgers at the park? Or do we, can we shave cost off of that, or can we eliminate another 10,000?
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I look at what the town's been able to do at the cinemas, and I like it. And I think the community likes it. I have no idea how much they're spending. I guess we could ask, but I imagine it isn't free. We're getting free polling at CVE. I'm pretty sure that the strategic planning building usage for all of that has been donated by CVE. Probably if we wanted to have the dinner again there next year, that would probably be donated. So I totally understand. And it's fine if that's what the group wants to do. I just don't want to.
The last thing I want to do is cut off an opportunity for community engagement. But I had the occasion of meeting with a city councilor from Montpelier last week who explained to me that they had removed $1.5 million from their budget, and they're still $3 million in the hole because of flooding. And so they're cutting positions. They lost a fire truck to the fire that burned RK Miles down. I feel like we're tap dancing around the edges here, and I think we need to do more.
So, on that note, because I want to make sure that you're okay with how this is.
Well, I want to do
it.
it. I want to try to get through
Yep.
this particular section
Okay.
first. Keep a little order.
I have nothing else on this.
Okay. So what does the group want to do? Do we want to take that meal out or keep it?
I would like to keep it because I think the community engagement is really important. Hopefully, it won't be anything close to $10,000, but that's one of the most important things I think coming out of the effort to create this city. And the hope was that we were going to be more engaged as a community. And I think that there's been some fallback from that. And I think we need to push forward to engage the community more. So, without diving too deep or getting too ahead of the conversation, but I would like to discuss all the departments. I would like to discuss these things in more detail.
These things?
So,
or are we good with this?
I'll give you a quick summary in the fact that, again, and I'll go back to my conversation the conversation we had last night. This is not about this. For me, it was not about one department. It was about all the departments, the contributing factors. At the time, it looked like the library was asking for, roughly 85 to 90,000. Now it's 52 with the adjustment. As we look at an increase of 770,000, and I'm with you, Elaine, in the fact that it feels like we have to nickel and dime to kind of bring this down, but I'm not sure nickel and diming. I feel like the nickel and diming starts to get to a point where we're cutting the wrong things. We're having the wrong strategic discussion about these departments. As I shared with the council since our last meeting, I kind of threw some numbers together to kind of ask the question for myself what right sizing a department might look like and comparing it to some other communities. So I have questions about, EJRP. I have questions about finance and information technology, really not finance as much, but I think the big thing for me as a counselor is the fact that what I feel like is that there are only a couple of departments that it's really clear for me on how to defend. The fire department, I can clearly and easily defend because of the fact that these volunteers have not been paid for mandatory training forever. That should be offset. So I have no problem defending that particular piece of this particular budget. But I don't necessarily have that with each and every one of these departments, EJRP being one of them, the library being another. Again, I want to emphasize, I totally understand, and I'm not nitpicking those little things. There was enough data out there for me to just go, is there a better, more cost-efficient way to do this? We just got that information today. I have read it. I am still digesting it, so I need a little time in order to kind of absorb the feedback that I received. But I would like to see more information specifically around EJRP and the specific things. If we were to reduce that budget, either level set it or even more, because again, if I think about the size of EJRP in comparison to other communities, maybe there's more it can be adjusted. I don't know, but I want to be clear about how this money is being spent, the focus of the programs, because I don't want to cut programs that impact the early childhood learning, the early education learning. I don't want to cut the senior services. But I will be blunt, and I said this the last time. I look at a pool that costs us a lot of money to have open for 2 months out of the year, but it's a great pool, and tons of people have great stories about it, and my neighbors and everything else. So I would hate to do that, but at the same time, I can't ignore the 7% increase on top of the fact that there is the community conversation out there about the school's potential increase and other increases that we're just faced in our day-to-day lives. So I struggle in the totality of our budget to find all the justifications that I can argue. So I would like to see some real specific feedback from our department heads about, if nothing else, if those departments that are increasing from last year to this year, if we were to remove those increases, what would we lose? Make me understand specifically what would we lose, so that I can have that so that I have to speak for myself, can have that community conversation, community debate, and understand from my constituents what they're willing to pay for. Because right now I hear from most people, they don't want to pay more.
I will address one small part of that. I think it's helpful to remember that part of the nitpicking is coming from, this is only the second city budget that we've developed as a full city. The first one is pretty good. Not that anybody would work hard on it, but we're still trying to get a handle on what this is. So as we go through, and it feels very much like we're nitpicking and we're asking difficult questions and they're painful, we're really just trying to figure out what is right. And I don't honestly think that we're going to have that answer for at least a year or two more. And we're going to really kind of level out, and it could be longer because they spent 10 or 12 years consolidating all these things, and it's going to take a bit of time to unwind it and really understand what this is going to be. So I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I'm just saying, to this idea that it feels like we're trimming around the edges, and I think we are, and I think we're just trying to figure it out because it's just the second one.
Yeah.
And all of that, as we did tonight for the first couple hours, we're also trying to do regular business and get things done that people have been asking for and people are talking about and are getting impatient for. So I just want to put that out there.
Can I just
Yes.
two things? Regina alluded earlier to the end of the packet where the enterprise budgets were.
Mhm.
Forgive me if I'm getting this wrong or forgetting something that I've been told, which is entirely likely. I was expecting to also see the EJRP Enterprise Fund, and there's nothing in the packet about that. And can you remind me when we're supposed to see that?
Regina, do you know?
I'm gonna pass that one to Jess.
Okay. Hi, Jess.
That'll be at the February 14th meeting.
Okay, thank you. My second point I wanted to make is noting the hour and the length of the conversation, and that a lot of the people in the audience have been waiting patiently to speak to the library. I wonder if we could take a break and let them do that.
In just a minute. Yes.
Okay.
As far as the library material goes, I was not, after just receiving it today, which is totally understandable, not ready to really discuss it. So from my point of view, for the Saturday meeting, I was going to suggest that we just present it Saturday as presented to us from the actual FY25 proposed budget, not the scenarios we received. I don't think any of us has had a chance to really dig into it and understand it. So there's that. And I guess I want to get back to trying to move forward and understand if you're able to move forward at all, because we do have to present something on Saturday. Or if you're not, without those answers, and then we'll have to decide what the group wants to do with that.
I am okay with moving forward for the conversation on Saturday, knowing too that Saturday is part of the conversation. Input can still be received, changes can still be made. So I'm fine with that.
Okay.
And I look forward to hearing the feedback. I'm sorry that I
Not
won't
at
be
all.
able to be in attendance since I already had a business trip planned well in advance.
Not a problem.
But I look forward to hearing the feedback.
Raj, can I make just one note too?
Yes.
Just on some of the things, Marcus, that you were describing on the EJRP program, on the EJRP side, just want to be clear, and I know this is hard to understand, and particularly because you don't have the EJRP program funds in front of you yet, but a lot of those are in the program fund. They're not in the general fund, so it doesn't, those things, even if we were to cut those expenses of those programs, it's not going to change the general fund tax rate.
Understood. I think, and I can't speak for Elaine. I'm reading between the lines, but I think we might be aligned on this. I think for me, it would really be of great benefit if to understand, because we're talking about the tax impact of these departments on our community. And in talking about that tax impact, we have to talk about the strategy or the direction of these particular departments. And I think doing that with only a portion of the information, not including the enterprise, then I'm not really taking in the whole department to have a realistic conversation about what the department is doing, how they're applying it. I'll speak of a different department. Like I'll take a step back and talk about wastewater, stormwater. I support the fact that what we're doing with that particular department right now, because I believe we need to stand up this utility. With that, I hope that at a future date, we can talk about the rate structure, because I think that there's an opportunity where something like that can be paid for by its use versus coming out of the general fund. So I think if we take the opportunity to talk about rate structure, that would be great. In the same context, we can have that conversation around something like EJRP about what are we doing? What are the services that we're providing that we're getting paid? Understanding that whole framework. But this is just a limited, small scope. So I totally understand, Regina, what you're saying. I just want to make sure that I fully understand this so that, again, when I go to the community and I'm having these conversations, that I can either defend it or I can acknowledge what direction we've given. So that's where I'm at the moment.
I will say to that point, the middle of page 2, where Regina described the group getting together to talk about the admin allocation for EJRP and coming up with $37,000 to put back into the general fund, I think it's pretty much what you're speaking to.
Yep.
They identified areas of those activities that are outside that are, I'm going to use the term business, where they receive funds in to cover them.
Yep.
And applied those against the general admin portion of the EJRP budget. So if it took a portion of someone who's an admin person at EJRP, they paid that back. So the fee-based program at EJRP paid back the general fund portion of EJRP, which is the base of EJRP, which is the, general staff and the place in the park.
Yep.
Not the park.
And can I just clarify?
You'll probably explain it better.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so, and then when I explain it wrong, Jess can correct me. So what's going on there in what we've got on page 2 of that section, page 19 in the packet, is the admin, the overall organization's admin. So the expenses you have for me, the expenses you have for Jess and the finance department, and those that's the admin adjustment that we're talking about, as opposed to more specifically looking just at EJRP and the program fund offsetting the EJRP admin folks. That portion we will look at more further, but that's not what you've got right here. You have EJRP program fund admin allocation to cover admin costs of the organization as a whole, and more specifically, some costs associated with the Park Street School, moving it over to the program fund for Park Street School as opposed to being in the general fund. But yes, point taken in the whole larger context of it is would be helpful to have all of these things in front of you.
And to Elaine's suggestion, realizing it's 8:53, is there anyone here with a short bedtime who's lucky enough to leave with that short bedtime? Is there anyone here that wants to speak to the library specifically?
I think kids with jammies should speak first.
Yes, kids with jammies that I hope they didn't leave. They were adorable.
Oh, they waited all that time.
They've had enough.
Hmm?
Yeah, great pajamas too. Fire truck.
Sure. Really? They were a fire truck?
And light up feet.
Sure, come on up. We've moved the table.
Let me take a second though, because on that particular note, just remind people that again, you can always email us and give us your feedback that way. It's always appreciated. So, anybody who's not able to make a meeting like this, please email us, share your thoughts. It's very helpful.
Okay.
And for folks at just one secretary, for folks at home, we will take more comment later. We're just trying to give folks an opportunity to speak so they can.
This is basically response. I view what I'm saying as response. Again, I'm Dorothy Bergendahl. I live on Taft Street, and I'm a longtime trustee of the Brownell Library. First, I'd like to thank Regina for the apology she made earlier in the meeting. My main question is, I know that the memo that our library director wrote didn't come through until this morning. So it's, again, lack of information, lack of time. But would you like me to summarize the answers to the questions you asked last time, which was, what would level funding look like? What would a 2% increase look like? And then our director has a third suggestion.
If they can be very specific to the actual items in those scenarios, then absolutely yes.
Well, I think I can keep it specific.
Very
Okay,
much interesting.
I will refer you to page 8 of the memo. Level funding means that the library hours would then change to 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., 5 days a week, no Saturday, period. We would lose out on various things like the ability to have evening programs like the Vermont Humanities Council. It's called Snapshot now. It was first Wednesday, and some other evening programs that happened during the year. Train hop, that'd work out okay. No, it wouldn't work out okay, but it would work out. A 2% increase would have the library open from 10 o'clock in the morning until 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, and 4 hours, 10 to 2, on Saturday, except for the 2 months when we are never open on Saturday anyway. Again, it would mainly affect the customers by not having evening programs. And anybody who actually wants to come to the library after work, before and after dinner. But other than that, now, the library director did suggest that if we left it at a 3% increase instead of level funding or 2%, we would be able to keep the current library hours. And then as a trustee, I would like to assure you that we would very carefully look, beginning much earlier in the year than we have been in the past, because we've gotten into a pattern of doing the budget. And we would like to actually meet with you as a group and discuss, with more than 2 weeks to figure out what we're doing, how we should approach the library programs and activities and availability. I would also suggest that on Saturday we're going to have a table. I want people who come to Saturday's meeting indicate on some kind of chart we put together when they would like to have the library open, so that we can get a feel for what the public wants, the city public wants. And I also think that in response to somebody at the last meeting, I would like to point out that the library, I summarize the library activity in 3 categories. You have someone who comes to the library, doesn't have any library card. They can come in the building, they can sit in the chairs, they can take something off the shelf and read it and put it back, hopefully in the right place. They can read the newspapers, the magazines, they can use the bathroom, and they can use the public computers, but they can't hog them. Someone who comes to the library with the card from outside of our library district, but in home card, can do all of that and can take out an item that is physically in the building and circulates. The Brana Library patrons can put holds on circulating items, can request interlibrary loans, can download all the electronic stuff that home card people don't get. So we are not giving everything to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that about summarizes what I'd like to say.
Can I ask you a question? Or
Yes.
is Wendy here? Wendy, are you with us?
I am here.
Hi.
Somewhere.
I'm trying to recognize that you're with us. This is yours. Do you want to say anything or add anything to this?
Yeah, it was a big ask to get that memo together and try to re-examine things in what ultimately was 10 days or 12 days, excuse me. All staff were involved, lots of feedback, lots of calculations and recalculations. The level of funding and 2% increase would really impact our just all staffing across the board because of what we need to have in the library to keep it safe. This community has changed over time, and we do need to have proper backup and be able to provide services to the regular users, as well as there's just a lot more people who need more at this point, computer help, reference services. So staff has more demands on it than ever. And the 3% increase that was proposed just kind of puts us over the tipping point of what we need to keep the staffing to be safe and open to the public. I guess that is the bigger issue, is that we have a big building. It's 3 stories. People are in all parts of it at all times. The door count does not reflect how long people are in the library. There are a lot of people who spend hours, generally adults, but there's also families that spend a lot of hours in the library. So it's a significant service that we offer the community, and we really keep it a safe, open place for everyone, regardless of what they are in the library for. And yeah, we have reduced several of the digital services in these budgets, which will impact staff providing information, but we also have staff trained to seek information and other databases provided through the state. But the library is really minimally staffed at this point. We were able to retain what we had asked for. I had previously asked to not say we needed 10 extra hours when we realized that the budget had not been, it was just inflated and we didn't understand why at that time. So the ask is not there anymore. We had that money in the budget and we weren't aware of it, and we can staff what we need to with those proposals to make sure that staff can be safe and the public can be safe in the building, and we can provide professional services to the community.
Thank you.
You don't need me anymore, do you?
Well, you don't have to run away. I just have a
I'm here.
question. And, again, these questions I don't want anybody to take these questions like, I'm asking it because this is what I intend. These are just questions. So they're just honest questions. In situations where there are, what Vermont Humanities is every 2 to 3 months? Quarterly?
Actually, right now, they're online only, and it's every week. But originally, it was 8 months a year, one night a month.
Okay.
That's why it was called First Wednesday.
Right.
Only some months we didn't do First Wednesday because of
Well, then that changes my
meetings.
question, I guess, because I was going to ask with some of these events, but a lot of them in the list are very regular, so that's not going to work.
They're
My question's not
predictable.
going to work because they're Friday Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. It's not like once a month.
Yeah.
But in the situation where it is a monthly thing, the cold board room rents out. When the cold board room rents out, is there staff that stays, or do the renters, the people borrowing the room, just they have access to the room and then they leave when they're done? Or do we staff that? I just honestly don't know.
Don't staff when people reserve the room. We do not staff that. We do staff library programs. At this point, we do just to ensure people can assume that there are staff there to direct them if they need it, and also to maintain safety, because we are trained in what those if there was anybody bringing the public together can sometimes not be always.
But on the other hand, before COVID, we had upwards of 100 people come to First Wednesday, which would not fit in the covert room.
Right.
And also we needed the screens and all this sort of stuff.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, in that case, we absolutely, it's not safe to have no staff or a few staff, because we do need to keep the people when we have programs in the main reading room, which we will be having coming up. It takes a lot more staff to make sure that we can open and close and keep people out of areas that are not currently open to the public.
Also, before COVID, we were open till 9 o'clock some nights. And Wednesday was one of those nights. And the program would start at 7. So they'd be out by the time of closing. Now we are only open until 8. So it's a toss-up whether First Wednesday, when it runs live in the Brownell, will be finished at 8.
Yeah.
So,
It's not, and because the Media Factory, who does the filming, is live streaming the Vermont Humanities programs, and it takes them a solid hour to pack up after the programs. So staff are remaining for that as well. And that's something we're still adjusting to, because having them do the live streaming and professional filming where they just would send us more of just a regular camera person without all of the equipment is a new, the Vermont Humanities Council is investing in paying professional staffing for the Media Factory to be able to have quality products that they can, programs that they can keep on their website for everybody to enjoy. So the hybrid has changed how the dynamic of some of our programs that we're still trying to anticipate what that means. And we also, there's some licensing that you can't make it hybrid if it's depending on the content.
And some of this discussion may be better waiting until Saturday when we can spend more time talking about how these things work. Because, you know, it's getting late.
No, and that's why I think, we were, and I appreciate the overview, but I think we're going to need more time.
Can
to
I
kind of digest it.
ask two clarifying questions?
Oh, yeah.
So you said that the budget was adjusted so that the 10 additional hours were taken out. Can you just quickly explain the 40? Because it's about $40,000 worth of increases in salaries and insurance, or insurance obviously flows with the salaries, but what is the increase year over year on those salaries? And I would like some more clarity on the safety issue, because, and I've heard your testimony before, I know the problems that occasionally crop up. My understanding is about 1 or 2 a month of serious issues, but I want to understand, because I also saw comments from Sheila, one of the trustees, saying that it wasn't a safety issue, that it's about just having 4 people to be present on all those floors. So I just want to be clear about the strategy here that's being, or the reasoning behind these increases. Thank you.
Our full-time staff are getting pulled in a lot more at desk interactions just because of the level of what people are asking for, as also just managing certain personalities who visit the library. The safety issues to ideally in just any sort of interaction that is going to be enforcing any sort of rules, we need 2 staff to respond, one to interact with patrons, another to back up in case there's any issues. When there's an elevated situation, we need to have an additional staff member that will call the police, or generally that would be a police situation and not outreach. And we've been in, that would leave 1 person at the desk to manage the library, while the dispatch usually keeps staff on the phone when we have to call the police. So everybody is engaged in a situation that is not normal library services. And because of full-time staff being pulled in more to just general library operations when they normally would get other desk work done, it's making it very hard for staff to keep up with what we are expected with interlibrary loans and reports, ordering materials, weeding materials, and managing the general day-to-day operations of a public library.
Thank you. The other thing I do want to add is I did receive a number of responses, as we all probably did, but I received a number of responses this week supporting the library. It's great to see the community coming out and supporting the library. One of the things, again, I did read your letter earlier, Wendy. I just want to acknowledge the fact that I was a little disappointed to see what those potential outcomes would look like. Because one of the things that I strongly heard, and I heard this before this conversation with this budget, I heard this campaigning, I heard this over the last year, is one of the things while people support the library, they miss not being able to go to the library on Saturdays during the summer. So when I look at or think about how the library gives services to this community, as I indicated earlier, I would love to feel like if we were talking about this, the budget the way we are and the numbers that we're looking at, I'd love to be able to tell them that we're increasing our services at the library, that we're giving them something else also in return for this increase. So I look forward to continuing this conversation. I look forward to continuing to get feedback from the community and what comes out of Saturday's conversation. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I can respond that there is a cost to being open on Saturdays in the summer that is not reflected in our budget. So that would require a budget increase, as well as our attendance generally reduces in the summer because people are enjoying Vermont and don't want to be as indoors as at least when this nice weather hits, or it gets more quiet in the library and people are not spending as much time at Brownell. And we also have those shifts to support the summer reading program, which is a very dynamic part of the Brownell Library. And we do not have the staffing to spread out during the summer at this point.
Thank you very much. I don't think we have any other council questions for the two of you, but we appreciate it. I think the idea is we're going to digest this more and more discussion on Saturday and see if we come back to this, how we come back to this.
Steve.
Yeah. Steve, come on up.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me speak to the budget tonight. I can't on Saturday since I'm moderating the meeting and need to be neutral in that meeting.
That'd be strange.
Yes. Anyway, I have a variety of comments, and some to the library and some in general. And I wanted to say, I appreciated Marcus's comment in the front porch forum to have people come and talk, and that the numbers were scary or whatever. I also, ultimately, it's not like the state budget where whatever you guys agree on is the answer. The voters get to weigh in at the end. One difference in recent years, of course, is, we're not at the floor. People can't make the adjustments in the meeting like we used to be able to do. So hopefully in these community conversations we have Saturday and et cetera, you can take some of that into account so that when people vote up or down, they're voting on hopefully, the best possible. I also want to encourage you to, just because a number is larger, people live here for a reason because of the services and the different things. We've touched on a lot in the conversation tonight, be it the library, the parks, stormwater, whatever. So sometimes, you got to put it to the vote and see what people want, right? And, if it turns out based on hearing the public hearing that, people don't want cuts or level funded areas or things like that, then put it to the vote. And if people don't want it, they'll vote against it. So like the point being that you don't have to try and refine this right to a nickel, because people will let you know if you're wrong at the end of the day, right? Because it'll pass or not. So anyway, so there's that going on. When I was on the board, the library was always easy to look at because it was a big number, right? It was one of the bigger departments. So it was always like, geez, because whenever you're going to look for anything, you talk about nickel and diamond, you always try and look at, well, what are the bigger numbers? Because that's where we can save money. So what was interesting is whenever anybody questioned it, there was always a lot of community support, and we ended up never really changing it that much because the community wanted it. There's never a problem with asking the question, of course, because that's healthy public discourse. Anyway, one thing that I've learned, my daughter works at the library now, and I've learned a lot more about the library and all the great services they do. And it's well beyond books. And, I've taken advantage of some of that myself as well. And I think it's just especially the Brownell, it's just such a gem in the community. And so I just wanted to get it out there that I'm in support. And again, I'll weigh all the numbers when I go in the voting booth, but I don't want to see it gutted, that's for certainly, or level funded or something like that. And it sounds like, the staff is really doing the best they can with different proposals, so you can, come up with it all. So anyway, that's just some feedback from when I was in your chair, but at least I knew that people could add, 50,000 or whatever they needed to add on the floor. We can't do that anymore, but people can at least vote up or down on how they feel. So I appreciate all the work you're doing. It sounds like you're really going through it. And I know it's going to take a couple years to deal with this. I know when I looked through all the budget charts, I was confused, and I've spent years looking at these. And I think a lot of that is because of the transition, where it used to be much more straightforward. You had the same, departments every year. Now we've got all this churn that we've kind of got to get through. And I think there could be some things, and let the voters decide. But don't try and arbitrarily, go too low. If that's the feedback you hear at meetings like Saturday, if you hear, then go with it. So anyway.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Amy
welcome.
Cooper, online.
Hi, thank you. I wish I was in person. I'm sorry, it's not. I meant to be. Because the Brownell Library for our family, we were exiting a very traumatic relationship, as many of you know. Our lives were in complete upheaval. We were food insecure. We were money insecure. It was nuts. And I worked in Burlington at the Y, and all of my work as an assistant aquatics director and as the head coach at the Y took place exactly when my children got out of school. And getting to safety was a difficult thing. Our home wasn't somewhere to go to when I was not there. And the Brownell was it was not just a refuge, but so impactful that my youngest ended up majoring in poetry. And investing in college for someone majoring in poetry is a solid thing, And with all the support and passion and care that my children, and in particular my youngest, received at Brownell and our school libraries, and that was beyond impactful. And when I think about equity, when I think about economics, and I think about single parents, and I think about people who are just working and working and working, if you know that your child is at the library and it's open for the hours you need, it is a startlingly comforting situation to know that your child at least has that kind of access, or that anyone would have that kind of access. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Annie. All right, I don't see anybody else online. I don't see anybody else with their hand up in the room. So let's continue.
Wait.
Yes, sorry. Come on up. Sorry, just remind us your name.
Okay. I'm Karen Hergesheimer.
Thanks.
I just want to thank you for your time today, and share with you guys how important the library is to my family. It's a community center. It's not just a place we go and check out books. We go and we feel safe there. We feel included. We feel part of a community. And it's the only public space that I can say that about in Essex Junction for my family. And learning about the budget and hearing these discussions is terrifying for my children, because they can't imagine not having a place that they can go to that feels safe. So I just wanted to share that, and how special a place it is for me and people I talk to, and what a binding part of our community it is, and how important it is to the fabric today and in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Just hope we put some of these comments on the Brownell website. There's a fantastic things to hear about a community resource. So I appreciate people taking time to share them. We've heard a lot of it online. I will keep everyone. But I think it's even more powerful in person when you can see the expressions. And I just think staff and trustees should be very proud of the resource they built and continue to operate. And it's amazing to hear these things. It's truly wonderful. So thank you.
Just clarify.
I think you've spoken. No, I'm kidding.
You had said earlier there was going to be another time to talk. This was for an earlier group, or is this the last time to talk about the library?
We're going to talk, giving people the time now because it's getting late, and we're probably opened up again when we're done talking about the budget. So it's really up to you. Okay. It's a threat, Chris. It's a threat. all kidding aside, if there's anybody else that wants to say anything. Okay, so let's move. It doesn't look like it. So let's move on and see where we can get with this, so we can get to Saturday. And I don't mean that in a joking way. It sounds like we're okay with the chart on page 1. I'd like to get past that and incorporate those changes for Saturday. Is that agreeable?
Agreed.
Sounds like it. Okay.
I'll be the minority on that one.
Okay. It is not the final time we're doing anything with this.
Yep.
The admin allocation change described on page 2 of the narrative, that further reduces the rate a bit. Are we comfortable with that?
Yes.
Great. Amber, you're good? Yes. Are there, and we already talked about needing time to ponder the report we received this morning.
Yep.
So are there any other specific changes that we as a group would like to see for the presentation on Saturday at this point? Or are we comfortable hearing what people come back and what we talk about at that event to bring back on the 14th?
I'm fine.
Amber looks good. I'm going to take Amber's expression to mean she's good.
I am happy moving forward with what changes you just asked for and the budget as it currently is.
Great.
Whatever that motion needs to be, I make it.
Looking for.
I don't know if there was a motion.
I think there is a motion.
There is
right,
a
Virginia?
motion.
Getting there.
I have it
Yep.
in front of me.
There were many, right? There was a few, or is it just the one?
It's just the one I see.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes.
And before you do that,
Yes.
Regina, do you have anything else to add to this conversation? Or Jess? Sorry to.
I do not have anything to add other than your agenda says warning a public hearing. That should have been struck. Apologies for that. You don't need to warn a public hearing. You already did that in December.
Right.
We're sticking with those dates. So Saturday's event already was warned as a public hearing, and then the 28th of February will be the second one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jess, you're happy? Or at least.
I just want to make one clarification that the items in the chart or the table on page 18 are already incorporated into the file that you have tonight.
Thank you for that. I just want to make sure that everybody was okay. So now would be a good time, sure, before we make a motion to move on. Sure.
Good evening, Richard Smith, still resident of the Junction, talking as a resident of the Junction, just to clarify. So it is great to hear some of the voices in the community come in and speak strongly for something. I think we too often, and I'll admit right now I'm taking my master's program in public administration. So one of the things they point out is often your loudest voices are the ones that feel most impacted and know about what's going on. Our community is very good about not always knowing about what's going on. Multiple times, I will just say I volunteer for an organization that they believe is full time. They just don't understand what's going on in their community. And I have concerns when you save 520 hours, that saves $52,000. Are we paying the librarians $1,000 an hour? So when we put stuff out that says that's what saves that, there must have been other things that were saved as well, or we're paying librarians very well. And I'm going to become a librarian. Of note as well, when we talk about merging the city, we talked about how we'd get rid of duplicate systems. And I would be interested as a resident to see if we've gotten rid of duplicate systems or if certain organizations and departments are still using systems that they're comfortable with instead of moving over to the systems. The organization I volunteer with, the fire department, we got rid of systems and moved over to the city systems to get rid of those duplicate costs and to focus on that. And those are areas that we don't normally ask those questions of, but I think as a city resident, I'm interested to see, did we get rid of duplicate systems, or did some departments decide to hold on to ones that they're most comfortable with instead of looking at saving the cost for the taxpayer? And though it may only be $6,000, when we start doing those $6,000 across 13 different departments, we start actually coming out with some real savings. And last meeting, everybody kept asking, like, what saves 1%? On $11 million, it's $110,000. So if you saved 6 across 13, you saved 1% for your residents at that point. And those are the things I think, as a city resident, I'm most concerned about, is those conversations are happening. And that's where we can save probably the small amounts, but across multiple departments. And I think when I talk, actually, I don't think. When I talk to you, that's what I want you to ask those questions. And that's where I think we need to dive into, is where can we save those 6,000 across multiple departments, because people held on to what they were comfortable with instead of learning the new systems that are available.
I will respond and say subscription services are the bugaboo of my personal bugaboo, and yet that is where we're going, and then you can see them add up.
Well,
so it is, I think for this board, it's been a focus of like trying to really, I think staff too, just again, this is the second budget, but a lot of that nitpicking has gone on yet, and I'm sure there's probably going to be more opportunity. But fun things like trying to extend out, because we're an IT subscribe-based service right now, extend out accounts to other people. That actually costs us more. So we're working on that. Definitely hear you. And again, that's where the nickel and diming sometimes feels silly, but it does add up.
Yeah.
And we're really just, like we've talked about, we're really just trying to find out what the actual is going to be after. So yeah, totally hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all had that moment where we realize that like both of us are paying for the dual membership to like Planet Fitness, and you're like, why are we doing that? And I feel the city, if we look across our departments, is doing that in areas.
Okay.
Maybe not Planet Fitness, but thank you.
You good? Is there any comment to that from Regina or Jess?
I just want to make one comment just to clarify that we definitely are not paying library staff $1,000 an hour.
Yes. I do appreciate you clarifying that. Are we ready for that motion? I believe we are.
I will move that the city council approve the preliminary budget with any amendments we've discussed.
Second.
Any further comment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 That was Amber. Motion passes. So it looks like that portion is done. Moving back up to the agenda. 5C, discussion and consideration of neighborhood development area expansion. Jess, if you're dropping off, thank you for joining us.
Okay, so Chris is still with us.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think most of the information that's you need for this is in the packet, but in summary, the Planning Commission has been looking at this for a while, and we're looking. We put together a draft application to the state to extend the neighborhood developments area. This is a state designated area which would carry some benefits, mostly for homeowners and landowners there who want to develop, but also for some city programs. We may be able to extend some benefits to the city as well, if it's necessary in the future. But yeah, maybe I'll just answer whatever questions city council has about it.
Amber, Marcus, any questions?
I'm good.
No questions from me.
Yeah.
I don't. I think the information included in the packet made it pretty clear for me. I think we've touched on this in the past. To be clear, this seems to extend, just want to make sure I'm clear, extends from what one might consider the downtown city core, down Pearl Street to the just before the jug handle at West Street Extension, down Park Street almost to the bridge or at the bridge, up Main. I can't.
That's correct.
Up Main to about. Can't even read that. Don't even, Educational Drive just beyond the town office, out 2A towards Colchester to about the turnoff as you go into the Essex High School complex, and a little bit of Brown Maple, short way up Maple.
Right. So these boundaries were designed to mimic the design review overlay district, because the intention of that district was that there was going to be development happening in those areas anyway. The state says that municipalities can extend by default the designation up to a quarter-mile radius of the village center designation, which we already have. So that's what this buffer shows. But we also know that Pearl Street is incredibly important in terms of a transit corridor, which is set for growth. And that's why it extends. The application extends west as well. It goes just to the rail tracks.
Can I ask why not down to Susie Wilson? Why not down to the border along the further stretch of 15 Pearl Street?
We're already stretching what the state says they be allowed to give us.
Okay.
And also one of the requirements is walkability, and there's a sidewalk on one side of the street there, but in terms of transit access, which was my main argument for going down Pearl Street at all. Right now, there's only transit access in one direction. Hopefully that can be fixed in the future, but at this point, it doesn't. I just didn't believe that there would be any chance we get it.
Okay. Amber, anything from you? I can't see you, but and Elaine, Marcus already said he was good. Do you have any questions about this?
I don't. I'm glad we're doing this.
Okay. Yeah, me too. Great.
So I move that the city council authorize the application for the expansion of the neighborhood development area boundaries through the Vermont Department of Housing and Community Development Designation Program.
Second.
Great. I have motion and a second. Without comment. Would you mind?
I will take my motion back.
Thank you. Is there anyone present or anyone online that has any comments they'd like to make on this program or this business item this evening? Going back to Zoom so I can see. Do not see any hands up in the room. I do not see any hands up online. Give it another couple seconds for anyone online that wants to make a comment. Seeing none, Marcus, would you please make that motion again?
I move that the city council authorize the application for the expansion of the neighborhood development area boundaries through the Vermont Department of Housing and Community Development Designation Program.
Second.
Great. Motion and a second. Without further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Moving on to 5D, discussion of 2 Lincoln renovation plan update. Harlan is here.
Hello.
Hello.
How would you like me to go about this? Obviously, there's a memo in there. And I've laid out some details in there. Would you like me to just highlight that and then we can kind of go from there?
Just the highlights would be.
Sure. So obviously, everybody's been looking for some answers and trying to understand what we've been spending all this time on. So it's been going on for a while, but there was a lot of things that we had to discover and find out, and people that we had to bring on board to bring this forward. So our initial steps, we started this back in March of 2022 and started bringing on, we secured an architect and developed some initial floor plans and went over several designs there where we got staff involved and said, okay, this is a floor plan that we've laid out. And staff was like, yeah, how do I get from point A to point B? Because this is what my job. So we did a lot of changing around with a lot of staff input. January through April of 23, we continued floor plans to bring up and bring on engineering teams. And then April 23 through July of 23, we've developed some RFPs for construction managers, developed draft contracts, did a lot of exploratory demolition. Not very many people look up when you're walking around, but you'll See where we got some patches in the ceilings throughout the building where we ripped the ceilings open to find out how this building was put together years ago. And then in the budgeting process, originally when the architects came on, they gave us an initial guess as to what they thought the project overall would be. And then there were some out-of-pocket costs that we were going to be facing. Out-of-pocket costs are moving in, moving out, the garbage that we're going to throw out that may be lying in the building to get out of the way for construction, insurance policies that we're going to have to carry on the construction project itself. Those types of items are not built into the actual construction costs that the construction manager is going to be giving to us. So when I'm talking about out-of-pocket costs, those are the things over and above just doing the construction project itself. So obviously you can see the original one came in with all the engineering fees and the rest of it at about $3.1 million, probably another $500,000 potentially in out-of-pocket costs. When we brought the construction manager on board after we went through that bid process, and the construction manager was able to take the initial documents that we had designed at that point, and they made a lot of assumptions as well. But they came back with a 2.9, so our architect wasn't too far off on the original numbers when they were making the guess. They came back 2.9 out of pocket. They brought up some other concerns with us, and we felt like our out-of-pocket costs were looking a little bit different than what we had originally projected. So the overall cost didn't change a whole lot. So we went back to the drawing board to work within the parameters that we've been given by the city council on the budget, and we started removing some stuff out of the project. And in the process of removing some of the stuff out of the project, our construction manager came back with another review of if we were to take these things out of the project, where they felt the project could get down to. We got down to 2.4. We're still, our out-of-pocket costs, we've got a basic idea on some of them, but there's some stuff that we just don't know. So that's why you're seeing a $300,000 range there. We are working in the process of trying to really pin those down at the moment, so that we can narrow that number and really give you a substantial number. But that's another step in the process. So we're currently working on the design to see if the project can be reduced further, because we have approximately $2.5 million for the project, including out-of-pocket expenses. And we want to be prepared with a solid contingency amounts that we have to hold. So we've got a 2x2 hole cut in the ceiling, and within that 2x2 hole, they can probably see 10 square feet of how the structure is put together. When in reality, we're probably trying to assume that whatever we can see in that 10 square feet is 100 square feet. So the contingency is when we rip the roof out and we go in and start taking a look at that stuff. If we start finding cracked support beams and so on and so forth, that would not be part of what we considered was going to be the normal renovation. We're going to need some money to cover those costs. So that's the contingency that we're trying to hold. So that kind of brings that piece of it together. Our next steps are we're going to bring the construction drawings to 50%. We're probably somewhere around 17 or 20% right now. Getting them to 50% really gets into some details. How many zones, heating zones, air conditioning zones, how many elevators. We're really going to get into some more detail from the engineers to bring back to the construction manager, who will again reevaluate the project with input from our engineers and how we want the building to function, to bring back a second price to us. While we're working on that piece internally, we're going to be searching out our out-of-pocket costs and trying to bring that number into a more realistic piece to bring to you. So we're going to get the second cost estimate of the project from the construction manager once we hit that 50% level, which is predicted to happen. The 50% level should be February 15th. So hopefully sometime shortly after that, just before March, we may have our second number, our second swing from the construction manager. And then develop a proposed construction schedule. I'm going to continue through the memo. We're going to try to identify all the out-of-pocket costs, and develop a transition plan to run the municipality during the construction. So our current thought process, because we're working within certain parameters within the budget, obviously we still have a municipality we have to run. And the senior center, because of where all the parking is going to take place, the senior center would not be, you wouldn't be able to get the senior bus in to drop the people off that are coming up for rides. I have a photo of one of the events for one of the senior centers and this center parking lot. The center parking lot is going to be completely used by construction trailers and vehicles that have to be close enough to the building to perform certain works on it as they're doing the building. And then because that area is filled, that's the main entrance to the teen center. So there was some questions out there earlier about whether or not the senior center could be used for senior services, and if the seniors or the teen center could try to operate out of the upper area. And the question is no, because of the safety factors that go into it and not enough room to get them in there. So in that purpose, it was like, okay, we're going to have these two big open spaces and we need to find a place to run the municipality. And one of the problems, I'm sure you know, when the town moved over to an outside building, is people went to go pay their taxes and they couldn't find out where their municipality was. It was very difficult. So we're taking a look at it, and we don't know that we can 100% fit in there, but we believe that we can, because a lot of our staff, as we know, COVID has taught us, a lot of services or a lot of things can be done from home. You don't always have to be in the office. So we're hoping a lot of the municipal staff will be able to work from home. I've identified at least 4 key figures that would be here every day. And we believe that we can run that area out of the senior center, and then the large open space up above could be used as storage for the items that we need to move out of the construction area and put into storage for a certain amount of time. Now, whether all of that square footage works for everything, we still have to work that detail out, but that's our initial plan right now. We have talked with the fire department, and we knew that we were going to affect the fire department. That parking that's along the end of the building here at the end, which is earmarked for the fire department, we will create signs, have signs made that turn that into temporary business only, municipal business only. If you're coming to pay your taxes or whatever the case may be, it'll be temporary parking in those spaces. And you'll be able to walk from there, not into the construction site, right around the corner and come into the door of the senior center and not be in the dangerous zone of construction equipment moving around, trucks loading and unloading. So we've talked with the fire department, and they believe that during those times from 7 to 5 p.m., we are not going to hamper their operation by using only those. We are definitely hoping to set up that office so that that area can be kept an eye on and make sure that we don't have anybody road parking there and leaving their vehicles for a long time. So we've been in touch with the fire department. At the moment, the plan is we should not interfere much with the traffic that would come up in front of Brownell Library and the back library. Staff members that are going to work here will be asked to utilize other parking lots depending on the timing. There is the Summit Street School parking lot, which is right across School Street here. We've got the public parking garage in behind Firebird and obviously along the sides. So our staff will also not utilize the back parking lot, so that we're trying not to interfere with the library's use. The people, there are some offices in the white building over on the other side that need parking. So we realize that we're putting a lot of stuff in, so we're going to accommodate that as much as possible. We spoke to the construction company about this particular plan and asked them about the amount of traffic that they're going to bring in. And they will make it a point that the contractors that are coming to work here on site that don't need their vehicle on site will also utilize out of area parking and not the back parking lot, to try to make sure that we're not hampering the library. So we're doing our due diligence to make sure that we operate as smoothly as possible without interfering too much. I just want to go through this real quickly. We've also talked to the contractors as far as maintaining water, electricity, and there are going to be some interruptions. There are going to be a day or two that we might have to close the municipal office to make certain connections within the project, and we hope to get enough notice in advance ahead of time to notify everybody. So we don't believe it's going to be 100% flawless, but we believe dollar-wise, it is in our best interest. Confusion-wise, it is in our best interest. If we move the municipal office to another area, we know we are going to get some people that are going to drive here. They're going to look for it. They're going to ask the construction company. They're going to walk into the construction zone and ask the construction company. And the construction company is going to be like, I don't know where they went. Where literally now somebody walking by is going to be able to point over to the door and say, yep, right through that door. So we're hoping to keep the confusion down for the community by trying to stay within the same footprint of where we are now for them to come in and receive the services that they need from the municipal office. I think I've touched on enough that I'm not sure if you want to ask any questions about that. I did at about 3 o'clock this afternoon receive a couple of schedule proposals, which are just preliminary and they hinge on a lot of things, but I can kind of go through the two options that they threw out there very quickly, and then we can have a discussion after that, or we can talk about the things I've already said.
I don't have any questions about what you presented so far.
Okay. So the construction manager, I asked them to get me a schedule because we knew that we needed to get an answer to people as to when this was going to start. You've asked me a lot of times, like first quarter, what's going on? So we could start as early as May, but it becomes more expensive and it becomes longer. We would be looking at, we still would not complete the project until February of 25. And the reason behind that is lead times on equipment. So we're going to go through the whole process. Eventually, we're going to come to you. You're going to improve the funding and the scheduling or the project itself once we get it into a package that's acceptable. And at that point, that's when all the wheels start to turn. An elevator, how long out is an elevator lead time?
How long it takes to get repaired?
May, June, July, August, September. So it's about 6 months lead time on an elevator from the time you order, from the time they're even going to bring it in. So it doesn't make sense for me to start in May, get a bunch of work done on the building, and then stop working for a couple of months, wait for the elevator to show up and the switch gears for the electrical piece, and then come back in and start doing it again. That shuts us down completely for a much longer period of time. So according to the schedules, we're looking at a start date of August of this coming year is when the actual construction will start. And because of the logistics that I talked about where we need to move out here and we need to get the senior center set up and rearrange it so that we can run a municipal office out of it, and we need to get things in storage for the senior center, if this schedule, so if the 50% construction runs don't get done by February 15th, that's going to change the schedule. And it just kind of keeps pushing everything down. So we have talked to that team and are pushing them very hard to be completed with that. I was heading in a certain direction with that, and I lost my train of thought.
I think you were talking about when folks would have to start moving.
Correct. So for the seniors, we would be looking at June 1st, that we would stop using the senior center as anything other than supporting the renovation. And then the teen center would need to be vacated by the end of June, which is just about the time that they slow down because school's out and they're busiest while school is in session. So they would be slowing down their programming at that point anyways.
So again, to be clear, the senior center is itself will be relocated and through EJRP, they will relocate it somewhere else. So I just want to make sure that it's also, that we're clear about this, that
Correct, and that's a better discussion to have with Brad and Mark as to the exact layout. I have been around when some of those conversations, and there are a lot of spaces throughout the city that we have that we can utilize to maintain the same programs that the seniors are doing.
I'm not worried about that detail right now. I just want to make sure that nobody grabs a clip of that and goes, see, they're shutting us down in June. So I just,
Yeah, that has been the narrative.
Yeah.
And they will be back.
Right, they will definitely be back. And it's very possible that within the changes to try to get the municipality in there and make everything work out of those spaces, we're hoping that they'll come back and be very happy with the center, so.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so bottom line is, and Regina, just looks like we'll know more on February 15th.
We should know more, yes, I would say by February 15th, we will definitely know more and really start to be able to lock some of those in. And again, with construction, everybody's planning that none of those beams are gonna be cracked. So everything is always tentative as to
They better not be
delivery of
cracked,
equipment and what
Better not be correct.
we find when we open it up and, but if everything goes the way that we plan, and these guys have been doing this type of work for years and years, so they've got a good feel for it. It should be about a 7 to 8 month project, and we should be moving back in. And even after they complete, we still have to move back in. So even though we're looking at about a mid-February finish date, we're probably not looking until an end of March in 25 for everybody to move back into the other areas and be back to the operation that we're running now. So it probably works out to be about a 9-month, 9 to 10 month shutdown of some of this stuff.
Regina, yeah, just one second. Regina, do you have anything to add to this that you wanted to jump in with?
I don't think so. I was going to clarify that senior center bit. So thank you, Marcus. Thanks, Harlan. I think you did a great job, and it is great to finally have these somewhat schedule. Like Harlan said, it's still subject to a lot of different things, but to have some sense of rough start time is helpful. Then Raj, I just want to say, Christina just turned on her camera. There's not a raised hand, so you might not see that, but if you're open to it, I think she'd like to make a comment.
Yeah, but just one sec. Elaine, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to, I'm thinking about the August primary and the November general election and how the clerk's office is going to manage not being in their space, and just putting in a plug to make sure that you're connecting with the clerk's office on a regular
we have been
basis.
in conversations with the clerk's office, and there's a lot more conversations. Community development, Terry, they have a lot of files downstairs,
Yes,
and
they
I don't
do.
know how many of those they need. And I'm not sure I can get all those filing cabinets into that space. So there's still a lot of detail we have to work out. That's why I say this is what we are thinking and we are hoping, but we're not 100% positive. That's the next phase now that we have the engineers and the architects working and they've got a deadline to work with. That now shoots me off into another direction of what fits where and how do we actually make this work. I've done some logistics on the backside as to the mechanical pieces and water and electricity and IT to supply all of the computers and the workstations that we're going to need to get in there to continue to run the municipality. Now it's the details.
Yeah.
Terry, how many of these file folders do you have to have access to on a regular basis? Susan, what do you need to make sure that you can take care of the primaries and everything else that's going to happen throughout that process?
What will happen to the vault?
The vault, glad you asked that question. We actually talked to the construction company. I've talked with Susan as to how often she needs to get to it. There is a fire rated filing cabinet that is crazy heavy. HR has one. We are probably going to purchase another one and we're going to put it in there. The stuff that she needs to get to on a regular basis, she tells me she can work out of that filing cabinet. And we have made arrangements with the construction company that we will give them heads up to let them know that we need to get into the vault for a particular reason. Susan's probably going to have a hard hat, an orange vest, and some steel toe shoes, but we are going to make arrangements for her to be able to access the vault. She believes that it could be once, twice a week.
Okay.
Having the filing cabinet in place, but that was a conversation that we had with her, to make sure that because we knew the vault was gonna be there, but it's gonna be in the midst of a lot of construction. So the construction company is very happy to work with us to make sure that we can still have access to that when we need it.
Amber, Marcus, anything?
Yeah, so on the construction plan, so it sounds like you're gonna basically take everything out of here. It's gonna be and so everything's gonna move over there. In this particular space, let me think how I phrase this. So are you planning that all construction will happen at the same time versus talking about, let's say, starting with the clerk's end of the building and working your way this way so that, say, the clerk could open before the construction is finished? Pardon me. Or something of that nature that could also, a phased approach that might also help get us from point A to point B.
Yeah, it won't be a phased approach. It'll be, the demolition guys are gonna come in and demolish everything that they need to demolish. The sheetrock guys are going to work from one end to the other to get all the sheetrock up. Same thing with the electricians. I mean, electricity starts at your panel and then it has to branch out, and to bring the electrician in and have him run that section and hook it into a panel, and then have the sheetrocker go in and do that and try to continue to use this section here, and then come in and try to demolish that section. It would be a 1.5 to a 2-year project, and you could probably add 30 or 40% to the cost.
The other question that I'll ask then is, in regards to the project itself, from memory, I'm struggling to remember. So what has come off the plan, and do you anticipate that whatever came off the plan in order to get from the 2.9 down to 2.4, right?
Sure.
What came off that plan? And then are we going to be coming back to that at a later date, or is it really something that we can live without?
It's something we're going to live with. It's some convenience pieces. So originally we were going to bring the building to a 3-phase power. One of the benefits of 3-phase power is that you're distributing the amperage over 3 legs. Things run cooler. It's a little more energy efficient, and things run faster. So we were going to go to 3-phase power, which meant we were going to need to upgrade the generator to a 3-phase generator. We were still going to, so the fire department is still connected in. We were still going to continue to supply them with single phase. There was some talk at some point that whatever we did here had to match there because it was connected, and that's not actually the case. And then all of our HVA systems would be 3-phase, and so there's some very minimal cost savings over the real long run going to a 3-phase system, but there's a lot of upfront costs. We have since then, and we were going to move the generator off from this area because we were looking at potentially a very nice 3-bay entrance area where there were going to be some benches and patios out there and make it more aesthetically pleasing to enter into the building. So we were going to move the generator to one of the islands in the back parking lot, and we were going to refeed that. That's all been changed. Keeping the same generator, sticking with single phase.
Okay.
Our elevator is now, instead of going from floor 1 to floor 2 in 3 seconds, it's probably going to take 7 seconds because single phase elevators are slower. But we're only a 2-story building. It'll traverse 3 stories. So that was something that we did. There was, in our lobby, we were going to do some more period type design of the age of this building, which was a vaulted ceiling with slat boards like it would have been done back then. That's gone. We're now going to a 2x2 industrial tile. There was, and we haven't given up on this. It's taken a little more bandwidth to try to figure it out, and we've had some great help from the Chittenden County Planning Commission trying to help us out, and VLTC. The systems that we were going to put in were going to incorporate a heat pump. to incorporate a heat pump into a conventional system, because a heat pump will not cover all the temperature swings within the state of Vermont. To incorporate a heat pump into that system is a large dollar amount. You can reduce the cost of those systems, still heat and air condition the building. In the long run, it costs us more money. There are some plans out there that this is some of the things that I am now going to concentrate on, making sure that we can fit everything in the piece of the puzzle. I got to take a look at these programs and see if they will give us enough money for a heat pump to put those back in. But to get down to that 2.4, we got down to there. The AV system that we were talking about for.
I'm gonna ask you guys to take this offline.
Okay.
Sorry, my sleep warning just went off.
Sure.
Everything shut down.
That's good. I'm
So,
good.
I apologize. Apple is sending me home.
No, that's fine.
No disrespect, Matt.
That's fun. That's
We've got Christina who really wants to comment from Essex Chips. So if Amber or Elaine, you don't have anything else?
No.
Sorry, I know it was rude, but we're getting into some serious weeds. And,
I'm good.
So Christina, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. So for those of you who don't know, I'm the director of Essex Chips. We're in this space upstairs at 2 Lincoln. We serve over 140 kids each week in our free after school program. We have lots of evening programming for the community, parent support groups, lots of good things. Since I started my position over 2 years ago, I've been shown blueprints and been told that this was going to happen. We're happy that we're finally approaching that. There definitely has been a lack of clarity. I'm glad to hear the timeline tonight. Our 2 main spaces are not being touched by this project. We will return with indoor-outdoor carpeting that's looks to be 15 plus years old, holes in the walls, holes in the ceilings, paint and walls that are crumbling. And I think that's sad for our families in Essex Junction. We do serve the whole Essex Westford School District boundary, but it's primarily Essex Junction families that we're serving. So we're being asked to move and nothing will be touched. And to hear that actually our space could be used for city offices when these families are relying on what we're providing at no cost to them is startling. So I would, really like to know if there's any consideration in the city offices being moved to the meeting room at the library or someplace else in close proximity, and really still put a plug, since the construction isn't touching what we call our big room and very little is happening in our game room, to really consider trying to allow us to continue serving the families of Essex Junction.
Regina, would you like to take that, or Harlan? I think the offices were intended to go into the senior center space, not the chip space.
Correct.
On the second floor. The large room was described as being used for some storage.
Correct.
And the reason for being asked to move is there's just no access to the building that's safe and accessible. I'm not even thrilled about the staff being here, but I don't know where else we go. I don't know if there's anything else to add to answer that.
I mean, I'm happy to, if Regina doesn't have anything to head in that direction, I'm happy to explain a little bit more about that.
Go ahead, Harlan.
So the big room that she's talking about, which is directly over the senior center, and we've discussed this in some of the conversations that we've had with her, that she'll be able to utilize that space as storage for stuff that she's going to need to move out of the teen center as well. The other area needs to be sealed off. And that's why it's safe to put staff in over at the senior center, and the upper area is also going to be sealed off because of the amount of work that's going to be created in this area and the office areas to change over the offices, the amount of dust and so on and so forth. There's no way of keeping it out of the other room that she's referring to that's not going to be utilized and that there's not going to be a lot of work. The room is not going to change a lot, but there's a lot of work within that area that's going to create an environment that you just can't put people into. And so these 3 brick buildings, because this brick building is actually 3 buildings, are going to be sealed off so that air cannot transfer between the 2 because of the dust and the atmosphere that's going to be within these areas. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to have this conversation with Christina. I don't believe she's brought that one particular area, and I could have explained at that point that those areas are just not going to be habitable by anybody. And then the larger area, again, the only access to it is to go up through, and then, well, they do have the fire exit on the other side, where I was concerned, right off the top of my head, I was concerned about exit strategy if there was event of a problem going on. But that upstairs area during the construction process really is only good for storage. We won't be putting any people up there. But we would be storing anything that she is not able to utilize within that time for the teen center, so all of their office space, so on and so forth. We are, however, working on, within the plans, a lot of detail, but there are a lot of improvements being made to the other sections of these teen center offices and a break room, art room type areas. We've made a lot of improvements and some door changes and some security issues that she's brought up that we've addressed with her and changed the plan several times in order to accommodate those spaces. But there's just no way you can have anybody in that other big room during construction.
Or is there?
May I just say
Yes,
one
was there
other
any-
thing?
Sure.
We also run the Little Free Food Pantry, and the box for that is in front between the bus stop and Brownell. We distribute over 700 items of food a month. We do an annual back to school drive, an annual warm coat drive. Without a place on site to store that food, it's not going to be able to be circulated at the 5 corners. We don't know where we're going to be with the after school program. We can ask, but we already have an established clientele that are coming to the food pantry. If the senior center is able to be used for city offices, I hope that we would be able to use it as storage for the food pantry so we could maintain filling that during the period of construction.
As I said, I don't even know I can fit the municipality in there yet. So that's definitely something we will take a look at. I think there may be some other possibilities within this compound, depending on how much cubic feet that storage would
Can you
require.
two stay connected on that going forward and keep that
Absolutely.
discussion going?
Absolutely.
Trying to find a space for that.
Yep.
Great.
This might be a
Thank
good
you.
opportunity for partnership or discussion with the library.
That's one of the pieces of the compound that I was thinking off the top of my head. I was thinking that's a possibility. The fire department's not manned full time all the time, so that would be a little more difficult to get in and out of. So, but we will definitely keep that conversation open and try to find that space as I'm trying to find space for everything else as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Is there anyone else that'd like to comment on this particular business item? There's no action that needs to be taken by the board.
No action.
Not seeing anyone in the room, not seeing anyone, am I seeing anyone online? Not seeing anyone online. Christine, thanks for joining us. Going back to the agenda. VMERS.
Third time's a try. Sorry about this. We have had this on the consent agenda. You approved it. The motion, in order for VMERS to accept this ask, the motion needs to be read in its entirety into the minutes.
I'm ready. Here I go. I move that the city council approve adding the addition of the VMERS DC plan to the city retirement benefit package effective July 1st, 2024, current VMERS eligible employees will be given a one-time irrevocable option to switch to the VMERS DC plan on July 1st, 2024. All VMERS eligible employees hired after that date of this vote will be enrolled in the respective DB group, and a notice of employment will be sent to VMERS.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Cool. We'll be very happy. We did not forget to read the motion.
Exactly as written.
Exactly as written and highlighted in yellow. We also have 5F, corrections to the minutes from the January 10th meeting. Marcus, you had one?
So noting the fact that the reference to the appointment of Michael and John to the Bike Walk Advisory Committee, it shows 2 votes, one for 5-0, one for 4-1. I seem to remember this was the 4-1, so I think that this first mention of a vote of 5-0 is incorrect and should be omitted.
Well, we had to vote to get out of executive session as well. So I think the 4-1 is the vote for the appointments. Oh, no, that was after.
I think they're respective. Do we have notes from that?
Yeah, I can get that, look back and get that corrected.
Bike walk, and then there was another committee,
Yes, and that's not.
but we didn't do anything on that one. That's right.
If you can handle that, Regina, that'd be great. That starts on line 71. And my addition was to add who is a person that is also here tonight, Chief Gaborio, as an attendee to that meeting. And that meeting had several people speaking from the audience that were not picked up on mic. So I was trying to be very careful tonight, and we'll be going forward to ask anyone that's speaking to get in front of a microphone, because we forget we can hear people in the room. Didn't really pick up what you were saying, but I wanted to correct the minutes to say you were here. And on line 83, when we were talking about the Vermont Alert, Chief Gaborio mentioned or asked that he be included on that. Fire was included in the memo, but I wanted to specifically add to line, where's my notes?
You said
83, that Fire Department Chief Chris Gaborio will have access to the program or something thereabouts, because we did discuss that access being provided to the EJFD. We ended it with it being in the, fire was included in the list. We talked about it, and he was here, so I want to make sure we noted that.
Yep.
So those 2 changes.
So I will move to accept those minutes with the changes just discussed.
I'll second. Any discussion? No, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes. Consent agenda.
I'll move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Great. I will make the comment that we are approving a renewal for a cannabis license and an approval of a new cannabis license, and just express frustration at the, lack of a better word, silliness that we're even considering there's apparently nothing we can ask about in this process. So a little odd, but that's what we're doing. And yeah. So without any other discussion, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Motion passes. Reading file, council member and manager comments. Who wants to go first?
I have some.
Sure.
Just 2.
Elaine, why don't you go ahead?
Should Regina go?
Regina, would you like to go?
Sorry, Elaine, you go ahead, because I have to try to find these. I know they exist.
Okay. 2 things. I wanted to point out the article, item C, about the innovative work that's happening at our wastewater treatment facility.
Absolutely.
And that Chelsea Mandigo is one of the authors of that paper. And it's just really impressive what our wastewater treatment facility is doing in terms of mitigating phosphorus. And I really just want to honor Chelsea for that. It's amazing work that we're doing. And The other comment I wanted to make is, unfortunately, I cannot be here on Saturday for the community meeting. I am deeply disappointed. I have to work, and I cannot get out of it. So I will not be able to be there on Saturday, and I'm very sorry to miss it. And I really hope that it's being recorded.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
So I'm with you, Lynn. I wish I could be there on Saturday. Same thing. I got to
We'll have quorum.
Unfortunately, I got to be out of town. But that being said, I do want to make sure and bring up and identify to the public that next week, Monday and Tuesday, there will be a number of focus groups on 6 pillars for Essex Junction. There will be conversations this weekend at the community meal, and more information will be gathered at that time for our strategic planning process. I want to encourage our residents to go to our website, look at the strategic plan, and look at these 6 pillars and see if there's an opportunity, if there's a chance that you can participate. I will say we do have people signed up for these right now, but I feel like the numbers are low. And I fear that coming out of this process, the numbers are going to be so small that it's going to feel like we had 3 people deciding the direction of this community. So I really would like our residents to pay attention to this and sign up. I will just say these out loud quickly. There's 6 pillars: housing and density, public services and facilities, economic development, transportation and connectivity, environment, and community engagement. All of them super important based on the conversations I've had with constituents. So please come out and participate and be a part of the strategic planning process. You can see how earlier we had this conversation about rental registry. It doesn't matter if you were on one side or the other. That came out of the discussions from residents and the strategic and the comprehensive plan process before. This will garner other projects and the direction for the city moving forward. So please, I would like people to sign up. I encourage our committee members to sign up. Residents, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Regina.
That was awesome because he said what's on my notes here to say for the manager report. I will only add that we also have, we're calling it a coffee chat. I'm going to call it a budget chat because it's virtual and it's at 6 p.m. But the next one is on February 6th.
Great.
So we'll be taking questions on the budget then as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Great. All those in favor say aye.
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 We are adjourned.